Chapter 3063. All the forces were clear about Parry family's wishful thinking. They wanted to make use of the dark heavenly ants to gather a group of people to fight. However, no force would take action at this time. No one was willing to be used as a tool by Parry family. It could be said that Parry family was the first to take action in this matter. They would not care how Zichen dealt with Parry family. What they cared about was what would happen in the future. If Parry family won, this matter would naturally be left unsettled. On the other hand, if Zichen won and continued to attack other forces, he would face the cooperation of all the Aborigines. At that time, it would be a real war. The representative of Parry family immediately sent the news back. The master of Parry family was naturally furious when he heard the news. All the forces had discussed and agreed to send Paramello the last time. This time, when danger came, no one was willing to take action. "We can only fight." Paramello said, "This is also an opportunity for us. As long as we obtain the final victory, no one will dare to touch us even if we suffer a great loss. Moreover, we can make use of this opportunity to recruit some small forces and cultivate an army that is good at fighting." In the current situation, this was the only way for Parry family. In this battle, it was impossible for them to seek peace with Zichen. They would either destroy him or recruit him. The latter was obviously impossible. Then, the former was the next step. The spiritual eagle was flying in the sky, investigating everything below. Zichen's team was resting. There were only about 20 of them. The dark heavenly ants had returned to his world. 3 days later, Zichen's team set off again. They went straight to the city where Parry family was located. Outside the city, an army of Aborigines appeared again. During this period, a team of God Clan appeared. However, this time, the number of God Clan members was very small. Their realms were very high. They were all grade 2. Both parties naturally wouldn't have too much conversation. Zichen immediately released the dark heavenly ants. After these dark heavenly ants appeared, they disappeared into the ground. Moments later, they reappeared in front of them and started attacking the natives. Besides Zichen, Tyrant and the others also rushed forward. Zichen did not make a move. Right now, he was already capable of dealing with a rank 4. That was why he would take the initiative to attack only when a rank 4 made a move. The battle lasted for 2 hours and ended with the dark heavenly ant retreating. The enemy didn't continue to chase after it. It was as though both parties had discussed it beforehand. They stopped when the time was right. After the battle, the Parry family began to recruit some elites in other cities. During this period, they gave them a generous reward. At the same time, they also began to recruit those Protoss who were rank 2 and above. The other forces had been quietly observing the situation. Through the Spirit Eagle's attention, they were probing Zichen's situation and the strength of the dark heavenly ant. In the next few battles, they calculated that the dark heavenly ant's battle would only last for 2 hours. Furthermore, the number of dark heavenly ants on Zichen's side was decreasing. After discovering this detail, some forces heaved a sigh of relief. Clearly, as long as Parry's forces put in more effort, Zichen's dark heavenly ants would be completely annihilated. Not sure if it was because they had seen the light at the end of the tunnel, there were actually many small forces showing up these days, expressing their desire to join Parry's forces and participate in the battle. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. In this 1 month, Parry's forces had suffered a great loss. Naturally, the dark heavenly ants had also suffered a great loss. In the living room, the members of the Parry family gathered together for a discussion. Paramello said, "According to the clues that we currently have, the dark heavenly ants are unable to fight for a long time. At most, they can only fight for 2 hours. After 2 hours, we can't be sure if they still have other combat powers." This was the experience that they had summed up after a month of battles. Paramello, who had not made a move since the first battle, said, "If we can come to a conclusion, then we'll go all out and kill Zichen in one fell swoop." The Parry family had reached the most critical moment. A rank 4 could make a move. At the same time, they had allied forces and could also mobilize a few rank 4 experts. Under such circumstances, killing Zichen shouldn't be a problem. The next step was to verify what was going on with the dark heavenly ants that Zichen was controlling and whether their combat powers could only last for 2 hours. When the two sides started fighting, the news about the battle had already spread in this area. Many deity tribe forces were aware of it. During this period, many deity tribe members had specially come to this area to watch the battle. However, when they saw that Zichen only had over 20 people, they inevitably felt disappointed. How could such a small number of people start a battle? However, after the battle broke out, they were completely stunned when they saw the dark heavenly ants. After that, they became extremely excited. This was because the deity tribe that had been oppressed for a long time was finally going to stand up at this moment. Looking at the natives dying one by one in the hands of the dark heavenly ants, they were extremely excited. After that, there were many more spectators at the periphery. They were deity tribe members from various forces. As the battle continued, they naturally heard a lot of gossip. For example, the expert who was controlling the dark heavenly ants to fight the natives had his own force. The force was called Nightmare Force. During this period, many people wanted to join Nightmare Force. However, it was a pity that Nightmare Force was no longer recruiting. This made many deity tribe members feel regretful. This was because they already knew that there was an awakening altar in Nightmare Force. Those deity tribe members who had left Nightmare Force because of the previous crisis felt extremely regretful. This was because they had missed an opportunity. Moreover, they didn't expect leader Zichen to be able to subdue the dark heavenly ants to participate in the battle. In that case, who among the natives would be his match? The only thing that comforted them was that there weren't many dark heavenly ants. If the Parry family worked hard, they would still be able to exterminate them. Therefore, Zichen couldn't be said to have a firm foothold in this area at the moment. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. During this period, the dark heavenly ants had lost many of their numbers. However, their gains were even greater. This was because the natives that they had devoured had mastered the power of rules. Devouring one was more effective than devouring hundreds of deity tribe members. The rules that were extracted by the dark heavenly ants were all used by the queen ant to nurture other dark heavenly ants. Chapter 3064. On the battlefield, Zichen looked ahead indifferently. Ever since he encountered the rank 4 in the first battle, the rank 4 had not appeared in the subsequent battles. He had not taken any action. As for the rank 3 who participated in the battle, they were all handed over to Tyrant and the rest. In the battlefield, the spirit-devouring kinggrass was also there. Su Mengyaro had specifically requested to bring it along. According to Zichen's original plan, it was to be left behind to guard the battlefield. However, Su Mengyaro said that it needed to grow. This time, the rank 4 did not appear. When the battle was about to reach an hour, the dark heavenly ants left one after another. "Let's go." Zichen turned around and left. Tyrant and the rest followed him. The battle had been going on for more than 2 months. Everyone was used to such a scene. The Protoss in the distance also retreated. They had been watching the battle from the periphery. Some of them had been there for a long time and did not leave. The team rested and reorganized hundreds of miles away. Tyrant was proudly talking about his battle results. The dark heavenly ants that had entered the ground appeared again. According to the development in the past 2 months, they would be kept in Zichen's world. After they finished recuperating, they would continue to participate in the battle. For more than 2 months, this scene had been playing out. Not only were the aboriginals who saw this scene through the spiritual eagle aware of it, but even the Protoss in the distance were very clear about it. This had become a habit. However, this habit was broken today. Before Zichen could keep all the dark heavenly ants, the surrounding void began to tremble. Shortly after, one space after another opened. The aboriginals walked out from it. Looking at the scene in front of them, the Protoss in the distance had a change of expression. Tyrant and the rest's expression became extremely solemn. They took out their weapons and were on high alert. Zichen looked around indifferently. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Paramello walked out from a space. He looked at Zichen below and said coldly, "Zichen, today is the day you die." Chen replied indifferently, "Initially, I wanted to play with you. Since you insist on courting death, I would like to say that today is the day Parry's forces will be annihilated." Paramello's expression changed. Shameless boasting. Periboles' voice sounded. He walked out from another space and said sarcastically, "Today, no matter what, you won't be able to leave here alive." Chen mocked, "You?" Periboles laughed out loud and released his rank 4 aura. At the same time, in the other 3 directions, 3 existences who were releasing the aura of grade 4 also appeared. For rank 4s had actually come. Chen furrowed his brows. From Periboles' point of view, it was obvious that Chen was afraid, so he laughed even more proudly. In the distance, there was an uproar. No one had thought that the Parry family would make such a move. In the sky, the spirit eagles transmitted the scene they saw back to their respective clans. At this time, all the families who cared about Chen or Puri's power were paying attention to all this. Obviously, Puri's power was going all out to destroy Chen. As such, today would be the final battle. In the space image before them, many aboriginals appeared. Their numbers were thousands of times more than Chen's group. At the same time, there were 4 4th-grade kings and countless 3rd-grade kings. If Chen did not have any other trump cards, he would not have any chance of surviving such a powerful team. Chen and his group were surrounded by layers upon layers of people. The surging killing intent was so strong that it was almost tangible. The space they were in had also become extremely solid due to the pressure, which even affected their speed. At first, Chen thought that there would be many powerhouses this time. He did not expect that there would be so many powerhouses and even more aboriginals. This kind of lineup was naturally enough to deal with them. However, Chen obviously had more than just these people. He stopped his action of keeping the dark heavenly ants. The dark heavenly ants that entered his world fell to the ground again and disappeared. Tyrant and the others' faces turned ghastly as they did not know how many dark heavenly ants Chen was controlling. With so many aboriginals in front of them, they felt extremely pressured. The Shun clan members who were further away sighed. It was not easy for the Shun clan to have some powerhouses. They did not expect them to die like this. In the face of such a situation, no one thought that Chen's group could survive. This was because these aboriginals were powerhouses and there were too many of them. Paramello looked at Chen, who was silent, and sneered. He then waved his hand and said, "Disperse." The aboriginals that he brought with him dispersed into the distance. Everyone kept a distance from each other. This was to prevent their energy from coming into contact with each other during the battle. This was to maximize the chances of killing the dark heavenly ants. Chen looked at this scene indifferently and still did not speak. In his world, there were still dark heavenly ants appearing. They seemed to be the dark heavenly ants that had just been kept. "Do you have anything else to say?" Paramello looked at Chen and asked. Chen shook his head and said, "No." At this moment, someone finally paid attention to Chen's domain. After such a long time, according to the original number of dark heavenly ants, there should be no more dark heavenly ants in Chen's world. However, why were they appearing continuously? Such a scene caused their expressions to change. Paramello obviously noticed this scene too. His eyes were fixed on Chen's domain. "You only noticed it now? Don't you think it's too late?" Chen sneered. At the same time, several more openings opened in his world. The dark heavenly ants in the openings were like a black torrent, pouring down in torrents. After the dark heavenly ants landed, they disappeared. At this moment, although they guessed that there were many dark heavenly ants in Chen's world, they did not know exactly how many there were. "Kill him." Without waiting for Paramello to speak, Perimboli, who was in the distance, roared and rushed towards Chen. At the same time, the other 3 grade 4 martial kings also rushed towards Chen from other directions. Looking at the 4 grade 4 martial kings, Chen smiled coldly. As his world opened, a grade 4 martial king aura burst out. A grade 4 martial king dark heavenly ant walked out and blocked Paramili. At the same time, 3 grade 4 martial king dark heavenly ants appeared in the other 3 directions and blocked the 4 people respectively. Grade 4 martial king dark heavenly ant. Seeing this scene, all the Aboriginals' faces changed drastically. As for Paramello, he felt that something was wrong. Chapter 3065. Chen had summoned 4 4th-grade king and many 3rd-grade king dark heavenly ants. The number of dark heavenly ants was no less than the Parry Force's experts. In fact, he was still holding back as he wasn't sure if the Parry family had other trump cards up their sleeves. However, judging by the number of dark heavenly ants that he had summoned, it should be enough for him to win the battle. Under the control of the Ant King, all the dark heavenly ants emerged from the ground and launched an effective attack. As for the 4 4th-grade king, they were dealt with by the 4 4th-grade dark heavenly ants. Battle cries could be heard everywhere. When the members of the God clan saw the scene from afar, they were all shocked. Similarly, the masters of the various forces who were watching the scene through the spiritual eagle were also shocked. Obviously, with Chen summoning so many dark heavenly ants, the outcome of the battle was uncertain. The Parry force that had the absolute advantage was gradually losing their advantage. Kill them. A 3rd-grade king who was a captain shouted. His natal spiritual weapon appeared in his hand and he charged towards the dark heavenly ants. Behind him were some spirit beasts. When the spirit beasts moved forward, they brought with them a strong aura. Buzz. The ground suddenly trembled and many dark heavenly ants appeared, blocking the path of the spirit beasts. Both sides began to bite and devour. The number of dark heavenly ants was far greater than what everyone had imagined. At that moment, there seemed to be an endless number of dark heavenly ants emerging from the ground. Kill. At the center of the battlefield, Tyrant shouted and charged towards the natives with the others. This time, they no longer had any scruples and could kill without restraint. Chen flew towards Parry Billy. During this period of time, he took a glance at Paramello. As a 2nd-grade king, Paramello stood there with a pale face. The confidence and arrogance that he had was long gone. Chen flew towards Parry Billy and threw out a punch. He had activated the power of the lightning body. The yin and yang energy was also swirling around the surface of his fist and a terrifying pressure was released. This was a war where life and death could happen at any time. Hence, Chen didn't hold back. This punch was also a thunder explosion. His fist exploded in front of Parry Billy. The explosive thunder energy scattered in all directions, forming a destructive wave that sent the dark heavenly ants and the natives flying. After the blow, Chen's body flew backwards. During this period of time, he unsheathed his saber and slashed down. A stream of saber light descended from the sky, drawing an arc in the air as it slashed towards Paribili. The saber-light saber's aura was heavy as a mountain. It was the aura of Ancestor's aura. Paramello's saber's hand's aura's head. Chen's powerful attack was destroyed by Paribili. However, as soon as he blocked Chen's attack, the 4th-grade king's dark heavenly ant approached him. Die. Chen's. Paribili shouted angrily. His aura burst out completely. He was from the soldier tribe, and he sent the dark heavenly ant of the 4th-grade king flying with one blow. Buzz. The heavenly thunder wings appeared behind Chen's back. As the heavenly thunder wings flapped, he increased his speed to the maximum and disappeared from his spot. Paramello's attack destroyed the afterimage he left behind. In the next moment, Chen appeared behind Paramello and unsheathed his saber. Paramello turned around and blocked with his weapon. The two forces of energy collided. At the moment of the explosion of energy, Chen was forcefully pushed back. His figure disappeared again. Swoosh. When he reappeared, he was behind Paramello again. The Nether Chief once told Chen that if he could withstand the King 4th grade Chen did not give Paramello a chance to attack. He used his speed to dodge and attack. Moreover, he used his full strength in each of his attacks. Compared to Paramello, Chen was not afraid of. If I can't exhaust your energy with one slash, I'll use 10 slashes. If 10 slashes are not enough, I'll use 100 slashes. Lightning 9 Deaths still could not find an opponent here. The 10th slash. Chen calculated silently in his heart. His figure turned into a flash of lightning and disappeared again. Paramello was furious, but he had lost his target. In terms of age, He was definitely older than Zichen. However, in terms of combat experience, he was obviously not as good as Zichen, who had been fighting all the time. The 20th slash. When Zichen's 20th slash fell, Paramello was already yelling in anger. Each of Zichen's attacks was full of power. He could only keep resisting. It was like fighting with someone of the same level. At this moment, he only had powerful means, but he could not cause any damage to Zichen. The King 4th Grade's Dark Heavenly Ant had gone to fight in other places. Paramello noticed that there were 2 Dark Heavenly Ants of the same level beside the other 3 King 4th Grades. Obviously, Zichen had concealed his true strength in the previous battle. When the 30th slash fell, Paramello had obviously become weak. His attacks were no longer fierce, and his face had turned pale. Zichen's figure flashed again. This time, he was not behind Paramello. Instead, he was standing in front of him. He put away his sheathed long saber and stared coldly at Paramello. Die. The next moment, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He rushed toward Paramello and threw a punch. This was the most powerful Thunderblast fist. The yin-yang rule power shrouded the surface of the fist, making the Thunderblast fist even more powerful and terrifying. Zichen's fist hit Paramello's weapon. The power of the Thunderblast fist exploded and instantly drowned Paramello's body. In the roar of energy, Paramello's body flew backward. He coughed up blood as he flew backward. Zichen's figure flashed again and punched again. The thunder continued to roar. Paramello, who had consumed a lot of energy, could not resist. His eyes were filled with horror. When the 3rd punch fell, Paramello's aura had become very weak. Whoosh! Looking at Paramello's retreating figure, Zichen unsheathed his saber. This was a space-splitting slash that contained extremely strong rule power. It swept past Paramello's neck. Blood splattered everywhere. Paramello was beheaded. A rank 4 had died. In the distance, Paramello's face was ashen as he looked at his dead ancestor. Even a rank 4 could not do anything to Zichen. Who could kill him? At the same time, he felt despair in his heart. There was a momentary pause in the battle as everyone stared at Zichen, feeling incomparably shocked. Especially the Protoss in the distance. They were only rank 2. They could not even defeat Wang Yiping's natives. They could not understand how Zichen could kill a rank 4. Could it be that this rank 4's combat strength was reduced? Kill. Leave no one alive. Chapter 3066. The moment Periboli died, a storm swept through the world. All the families who saw the scene through the spiritual eagle were shocked. At this moment, they had to admit that the world was going to change. The era of oppression on the deity clan was coming to an end. Unless, of course, Zichen would die here today. However, looking at the situation before them, how could Zichen, who was controlling 6 Dark Heavenly Ants, be killed so easily? The master of the Klee family sighed. The world must acknowledge Zichen's existence. At this moment, he felt lucky that the Klee family did not attack this time. Otherwise, they would follow in Parry's footsteps. It seems that only the royal forces can deal with Zichen's team. If they don't attack, Parry's forces will be annihilated. Zichen's nightmare force will officially rise. Under the spiritual eagle's observation, the battle was still going on. However, Periboli's death was a huge blow to Parry's forces, seriously affecting their morale. Coupled with the dark heavenly ants that kept appearing from the ground, they could not see any hope. Moreover, Zichen, who had killed a 4th grade king, did not seem to have consumed any energy. He turned around and rushed toward his second opponent. This battle was almost impossible to continue. Looking at the battlefield, where the morale was at its lowest, the battle was almost one-sided. Periboli reluctantly shouted for a retreat. He knew that Parry's forces had been defeated, completely defeated. The order to retreat had been given, but how could they retreat smoothly? Unknowingly, the number of dark heavenly ants that appeared was more than 10 times their number. Retreat quickly, Periboli shouted again, his voice echoing throughout the battlefield. The indigenous people who were in the battle gradually began to retreat. Just as a portion of the experts broke through the blockade and flew toward the city where Parry's forces was, they saw a black line in front of them. The black line covered the sky, forming darkness. Looking at the dark heavenly ants that formed a curtain of darkness, Pariboli was in complete despair. Why are there so many of them? Did he control the queen ant? The number of dark heavenly ants had completely exceeded his imagination. His face was pale, and there was no sign of life in his eyes. The darkness was moving in this direction, and a terrifying pressure filled everyone's hearts. Some people couldn't bear it and turned to flee in other directions. The horizon was filled with darkness, forming a curtain of darkness. Everyone was in despair. Paramello turned around and shouted at Zichen, "Zichen, we surrender." Zichen, who was fighting Wang Siping, didn't respond at all. "We are willing to use resources to redeem our lives. We admit defeat in this battle." Paramello shouted again. "It's too late. When you threatened me with my friend's life, your fate was already sealed." Zichen responded coldly. In front of him, his rank 4 opponent was sent flying due to the huge consumption of energy. Rank 4 coughed up blood in midair, his eyes filled with shock. 2 4th-grade king-level dark heavenly ants rushed up and let out miserable shrieks. "Leave no one alive." Zichen's voice was still cold, and it was filled with determination. In fact, Zichen was willing to use resources in exchange for their lives. However, the queen ant was obviously unwilling to do so. The resources weren't of much use to her. What she needed were the corpses of the aborigines. After the dark heavenly ants devoured the corpses, they would turn the corpses into energy, which would be of great use to the queen ant. The more aborigines gathered by Paramello, the more dark heavenly ants Zichen could use. At this moment, the darkness in all directions was closing in on them. It was as though a few black torrents had merged together. Everything in the surroundings had turned into darkness. The God Clan warriors who were watching the battle from a distance were so shocked that they couldn't say a word when they saw the black mass of people. Similarly, the masters of the forces who couldn't see anything through the spiritual eagle were also shocked. This time, there were even more dark heavenly ants, to the extent that their scalps were numb. Under such circumstances, no force dared to declare that they could go against Zichen. If the battle really happened, what awaited them would definitely be annihilation. Looking at the densely packed dark heavenly ants, everyone could already tell that Paramello's forces had lost their momentum. The black mass of dark heavenly ants shrouded the sky, confirming the name of darkness. This battle lasted for about 4 hours. The dark heavenly ants disappeared. At the same time, the army of Paramello's forces also disappeared. Without a doubt, everyone was dead. Even their corpses were gone. The dark heavenly ants dived into the ground. The surroundings became spacious again. Blood was everywhere, and the smell of blood was extremely strong. Monk and the others walked towards Zichen. Their bodies were also covered in blood. Some of it was their own, and some of it was the enemy's. Everyone was injured, but they weren't in danger. At this moment, they looked at Zichen. Zichen said, "Let's go to the city." In today's battle, Paramello's forces had suffered heavy losses. Many of their absolute combat power had died. What Zichen had to do next was to destroy this force. They walked towards the city where Paramello's forces were located. The deities at the back guessed his purpose. Hence, they all followed, but they all followed from afar. Along the way, everyone was silent. The short distance of several hundred miles could be reached very quickly to them. Zichen arrived at the place. The city gate was closed. On the city wall, the figures of the natives appeared. They had seen everything that had happened in the previous battle through the spirit eagles. The dark heavenly ants reappeared and then surrounded the city. "My lord, please calm down." A voice came from above the city wall. Zichen didn't give the order to attack. A moment later, the city gate opened. Large carriages pulled by soul beasts walked out of the city. Those large carriages were piled with crystals. Those were all superm crystal. Moreover, they were all complete. They released a bright light that was a little dazzling. After the large carriages appeared, they were pulled by soul beasts. They stopped in front and lined up in a row. There were a total of 28 carriages. There were countless superm crystal piled up on the carriages. "My lord, These are all the resources we have. We are willing to contribute them to protect the lives of the people in Paramello's forces. Behind those carriages stood a middle-aged man. Behind the middle-aged man stood some women and children. This was the first time Zichen saw the women and children of the natives. They had always been strong, but at this moment, they showed their weak side. At the same time, many spiritual eagles were watching what was happening below from above. Those superb crystal made them envious. However, they were more concerned about Zichen's attitude towards this matter. Because this was related to Zichen's attitude towards the other natives of this world. Chapter 3067. Zichen glanced at the middle-aged man and nodded. Then, he opened up his world and took away all the superb crystal. The new master of the Pari force heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the master did not pursue the matter, the Pari force would survive. After taking away all the superb crystal, Zichen said, "Our grudges are written off." After saying that, Zichen turned around and left. Monk and the rest followed. Their purpose was to seek revenge. Now that all the people who deserved to die were dead and the Pari force had suffered heavy losses, they had achieved their purpose. Naturally, they should leave. The dark heavenly ants that besieged the city returned to Zichen's world. Looking at Zichen and the disappearing dark heavenly ants, everyone in the Pari force relaxed. At the same time, they felt extremely regretful. If they had known that this would happen, they would definitely not have made an enemy out of Zichen. Now, not only did they not gain anything, they even caused their family to suffer heavy losses. At the same time, the aristocratic families who saw this scene through the spirit eagles also relaxed. Zichen did not completely destroy the Pari family. This proved that he did not have the ambition to dominate the world. This was enough for the aboriginals. No one thought that Zichen was preparing to bide his time. It was because it was completely useless. The army of dark heavenly ants was enough to destroy many forces. "Master, we are willing to join your force." When Zichen was moving forward, a rank 2 divine tribe stepped forward and said, "Master, we are also willing to join." More divine tribe members stepped forward and expressed their desire to join the Nightmare Force. They expressed their absolute loyalty. Swoosh! Zichen's body flashed and he disappeared with teleportation. After this battle, he would not be a threat in this world. He could completely calm down and develop his force. As such, the number of divine tribe members in the Nightmare Force was sufficient for the time being. Looking at Zichen's disappearance, the divine tribe members were extremely disappointed and left immediately. Naturally, they would not give up just like that. The situation in this world was changing. If they seized the opportunity, their fate would naturally change. Zichen returned to the Nightmare faction. After a few months of development, the place had been rebuilt, and the atmosphere had become lively again. The news of Zichen's victory quickly spread. This made all the Protoss who were part of the Nightmare organization seethe with excitement. Even the native forces had been defeated, so it was naturally safer for them to stay here. At this moment, they were all very happy. At the same time, they were happy for the choice they had made back then. This was because many people wanted to join the Nightmare faction, and some of those who had left wanted to return, but none of them had succeeded. Next, Zichen would leave the opportunity to these people. Not long after Zichen returned, some natives came looking for him. It was Klee's faction. This mine used to be under the jurisdiction of Kelly's organization. The person who came was the family head of the Kelly faction. The reason why he came personally was to show his sincerity. In the main hall, Zichen met with the patriarch of the Klee faction. His name was Klee Brunei, and the moment he arrived, he immediately stated his intentions. "We're willing to buy all the resources collected by the Nightmare faction. The price will be 10% higher than the actual price." This was a very fair price. It was hundreds of times better than what the other factions had casually offered. Zichen said, "If that's all, then you won't be able to obtain the Nightmare faction's friendship." Zichen knew very well why Klee's faction had come. It was nothing more than an alliance in the name of trade. However, it was clear that this price was not enough. Klee Brunei was not dismayed when he heard this, and he said again, "We'll buy twice the normal price." Not counting the many years of oppression of the Protoss, under normal circumstances, they would make 3 times the profit. If other costs were removed, twice the profit would be the limit. Now that Klee Brunei was willing to pay twice the price, there was no profit to be made. Even if there was, it would be very little. It could be said that this was a very sincere price for friendship. Deal. Zi Chen did not hesitate and directly nodded in agreement, even though he had already guessed that many other factions were on their way. However, if the Nightmare faction wanted to develop for a long time, they had to make sure that their allies did not suffer losses. In this regard, Klee Brunei's faction had given them the right conditions. Klee Brunei did not expect Zi Chen to agree so quickly. This surprised him, but it made him even happier. Thus, when he left behind a sum of superb crystal resources. These resources were obtained from the Parry faction's shops. Obviously, after the last battle, the Parry faction's foundation had been shaken. Their original properties were being targeted by other factions and were beginning to be divided up. The enemies of the natives had never been the Protoss of the past, but the pack of tigers and wolves that claimed to be their allies. After Klee Brunei left, other factions came one after another, but Zi Chen did not meet any of them. Even though the benefits they offered were high enough. Several months passed quickly. Yi Qian, who had returned, led a group of newcomers and Wei Li to the Awakening Altar. The previous group had not yet awakened their powers. Recently, the Protoss outside the faction have expressed their desire to join us. On this day, Su Mengyaro came to find Zi Chen and told him about this. He knew about this, but Su Mengyaro had come specifically to tell him about it for some other reason. Zi Chen looked at her. If we can't recruit people for the time being, then let's cooperate with them. Su Mengyaro said, Li Ari should be breaking through soon. At that time, we will have 2 awakening altars, and more people will be able to awaken. Under such circumstances, we will have to recruit others sooner or later. Or rather, we will have to recruit some new miners. Now that we can get resources at a high price from the Klee family, why not collect them from other places and then resell them? Zi Chen hesitated slightly. Is that okay? Su Mengyaro smiled. Based on the rewards given by the natives, I calculated that the Klee faction will still be able to make a profit if we collect enough resources at this price. It's just a matter of how much. In this world, no one would complain about having too many resources, so as long as we provide enough resources, the Klee family's profits will be greater. Zi Chen nodded and said, Then what do you suggest? We will pay them double, so when we collect resources, we will collect them at the normal price. This price was much higher than normal transactions between the Protoss and the natives. Of course, it was still lower than what Zi Chen was paying, but at this price, she believed that no faction would refuse. Very well, I'll have to trouble you to arrange this matter, Zi Chen said. Everything here was arranged by Su Mengyaro. She took care of this force in an orderly manner, which made Zi Chen feel very relieved. Chapter 3068. Zi Chen was refining the superb crystal. This kind of law crystal could not only increase the speed of cultivation, but it could also speed up Zi Chen's comprehension. Zi Chen currently needed to comprehend the true meaning and break through to the next realm. Therefore, his superb crystal was consumed very quickly, but his improvement was also very obvious. After knowing that Zi Chen would not meet anyone no matter how high the price was, the other forces gradually stopped coming. They were very regretful that they had missed such a good opportunity. Amidst this, the Klee family had gained the friendship of Zi Chen alone. It could be said that they had gained the most this time. Therefore, in the following purge of the Parry family, the other forces deliberately excluded the Klee family. In just a few months, all the shops of the Parry family in other cities were all taken away. After that, many forces came outside the city where the Parry family was located. Their goal was to completely destroy the Parry family. The new head of the Parry family stood on the city wall and looked down at the crowd below. He said coldly, "You are going too far." Someone below said, "If you know what's good for you, open the city gate yourselves. This way, we might give you people a chance to be slaves and even leave your young bloodline alive. Otherwise, after we enter the city, the only ones alive can only be women." Women had the ability to give birth and could reproduce, so they would live. As for the others, they would naturally be destroyed. From then on, the Parry family would disappear from this continent forever. This was also why the other forces were hesitant about targeting Zichen. Because once they were defeated or suffered heavy losses, they would face the danger of being exterminated, just like what was happening now. Looking at the silent head of the Parry family, the person below said again, "Our time is very precious. We will give you an incense's time to consider. If not, bear the consequences." The new head of the Parry family said indifferently, "You are going too far. Do you really think that there is no one left in the Parry family?" As the sound of his voice faded, a powerful aura came from the top of the city wall. A person stood on the city wall. He was wearing armor that covered his entire body. His entire body was exuding a tyrannical aura. 4th grade. Seeing this scene, the expressions of everyone below changed greatly as they looked at that person in disbelief. Not only was he a rank 4 craftsman, but he was also wearing a set of armor that covered his entire body. This kind of armor could only be crafted by the royal family of the craftsman race. This was a protective armor. If the royal family wanted to refine a set, it would cost an extremely high price. At the same time, wearing the protective armor in battle would greatly increase one's combat strength. However, what they couldn't understand was why the Parry family didn't send someone with protective armor when they fought Zichen last time. In that case, Zichen's death was certain. The new head of the Parry family looked at the shocked crowd below, and his expression became extremely complicated. He recalled the conversation with Parimello. "If we fail this time, then hand over all the superb crystal to Zichen in exchange for your freedom." I believed that Zichen wouldn't refuse under the watchful eyes of so many forces. "Don't ever touch our family's foundation. That is our last resort, the only way to ensure the survival of our bloodline. Why don't you send them out together? Won't the chances of winning be greater this way? If 4 rank 4 kings can't kill Zichen, it's useless to send one more, just in case." Parimello's last resort, which he had left behind, worked today. A family with a rank 4 king was bound to be a big family, not to mention that this rank 4 king had protective armor. Under such circumstances, unless these forces also sent a rank 4 king, but if a rank 4 king was killed during the battle, they would lose their foundation. The Parry family would be a lesson to them. The Parry family didn't have any reaction when the family's shops were taken away, because they couldn't keep those shops, and it wasn't time for the family to be exterminated. In the face of such a situation, their foundation naturally had to be used. No force dared to go against them. The people of these forces looked at each other and returned in disappointment. In the main hall, Zichen was still refining the superb crystal. In his world, the Queen Ant was refining the resources obtained from this battle. With these resources, it would be able to create even more 4th stage King Dark Heavenly Ants. In this battle, it had gained a lot. In another area, several of Zichen's doppelgangers were comprehending the ancestral wing tablet. They temporarily gave up on comprehending the ancestral saber tablet. In their hands, each of them held a piece of superb crystal. With the help of the high-quality rule power in the superb crystal, they comprehended the true meaning in the ancestral stele. Rays of brilliance flowed from the surface of their bodies. Not far away, the deity's doppelganger was also refining the superb crystal, striving for a breakthrough in strength. Since the last time he refined the netherworld power, the divine power flowing in his body had changed into the netherworld power. Even though he had broken through during this period, the divine power in his body still didn't exist. However, the netherworld power was obviously much stronger than the divine power, so the doppelganger wasn't depressed. And at that time, Zichen needed a powerful doppelganger. Buzz! Just as the deity's doppelganger was refining the superb crystal, a tremor came from not far away, with a wave of ripples. The deity's doppelganger turned his head and saw that a true meaning had appeared on the doppelgangers. Obviously, they had comprehended the true meaning of the ancestral wing tablet. The deity's doppelganger smiled. The next moment, the real body appeared. The doppelgangers all returned to Zichen's body. As he accepted the enlightenment of the doppelganger, the true meaning of the ancestral Tao tablet also flowed around him. Behind Zichen, the heavenly thunder wings unfolded. The ancestral wing tablet in front of him flew towards Zichen. The next moment, surrounded by 3 different levels of true meaning, the ancestral wing tablet merged into the heavenly thunder wings on Zichen's back. Whoosh! Behind Zichen, the heavenly thunder wings shook gently. A ray of brilliance appeared and flowed in this world. It was a real ray of light that couldn't be captured by the naked eye. Such speed was much faster than the God Clan's Fleetfoot. The brilliance flashed again, and Zichen's figure reappeared. The doppelgangers that had disappeared earlier reappeared and began to comprehend the blade will of the ancestral saber tablet. Zichen turned his head, nodded at the deity's doppelganger, and his figure disappeared again. Comprehending the first king-level true meaning of extreme speed was considered a big gain. Among the Nightmare faction, the first batch of God Clan forces came to exchange resources. They brought a lot of resources, and after Su Mengyaro found someone to check them carefully, they gave them a reasonable price. This price was 100 times more than what they usually exchanged, which was a pleasant surprise to them. Thus, after they left, the news began to spread. Following that, more Protoss forces came to this place to trade for resources. Their actions completely drew a line between them and the original native forces. Chapter 3069. The Nightmare faction used to control 5 mineral veins, which were number 1 to number 5. After Zichen investigated all the mineral veins, he gave up on 4 of them, leaving only number 3 mineral vein. The purity of the spiritual energy in this mineral vein was extremely high, so Zichen valued it the most. After learning that something was wrong with this mineral vein, he immediately ended his cultivation and went to number 3 mineral vein with Su Mengyaro. When they arrived at number 3 mineral vein, Zichen saw that the miners had all retreated and were looking ahead in fear. Monk and the others were standing around the mineral vein. Their territory covered the area below, and they were on high alert. In the mine below, smoke constantly gushed out and rose up, shrouding the entire mine. The smoke was formed by pure spiritual energy. When did this happen? Zichen looked down and asked. Last night. Longhu, who was in charge of this place, said. Were there any casualties? No. When the abnormality happened, I asked everyone to retreat. In this situation, it was highly likely that they had encountered the King of God's soul essence. For the ordinary miners, the discovery of the King of God's soul essence meant disaster and death. However, for Zichen and the others, the discovery of the King of God's soul essence meant a great opportunity. The King of God's soul essence was much more advanced than the superm crystal. Once refined, one's realm would improve by leaps and bounds. I'll go in and take a look. Zichen looked down and said. Be careful. Su Mengyaro said. I'll go with you. Monk flew toward them. Zichen shook his head and said, no need. I'll take the spirit-devouring king grass. You guys stay outside. Also, remember to evacuate them to avoid any accidents. Zichen walked toward the mine below. During this time, he could feel the rich spiritual energy rushing toward him. As he walked deeper into the mine, the spiritual energy became thicker. Zichen's spiritual thoughts shrouded the surroundings, and the spirit-devouring king grass floated above his head. The mine was huge, and it meandered deep into the ground. Zichen did not encounter any danger, and he went deep quickly. Soon, he reached the end of the mineral vein, where the rich spiritual energy was gushing out. Zichen took a deep breath. The spiritual energy that entered his body was very dense. It was as if he was refining the superm crystal. If he were to stay here and cultivate, his cultivation speed would definitely increase. However, compared to the spiritual energy here, Zichen was more willing to explore deeper. He glanced at the spirit-devouring king grass beside him and asked, is there any way to take me in? The roots of the spirit-devouring king grass released a ray of light that enveloped Zichen. In the next moment, Zichen's body floated up uncontrollably. The spirit-devouring king grass fell on top of Zichen's head. It was as if a blade of grass had grown on his head. Then, it took him forward. His body melted into the ground and kept moving downward. His spiritual thoughts could not explore the surroundings, so he did not know what was around him. He could only see a vast expanse of whiteness. As he went deeper, Zichen felt a strong spiritual energy fluctuation. It was the superm crystal contained in the ground. He could clearly see pieces of superm crystal. They were all pure and complete. They could be used after they were mined. It would not be long before the miners could mine here. As he went deeper, he found more and more superm crystal. After about a quarter of an hour, Chen suddenly felt a ripple. This ripple was very strong, and it even touched the light outside his body. The spirit-devouring king grass flew forward, but it slowed down significantly. It seemed to have sensed some danger. The ripple was still there, but he did not know where it came from. Whoosh! As Chen continued to descend, he arrived at a relatively spacious area. This was where the ripples came from. Chen saw a piece of superm crystal in front of him. This piece of superm crystal was about the size of a human head. It was sparkling and translucent. He could vaguely see that a small sprite was sealed inside. This is the godly king's soul essence. Looking at the lone crystal in this small space, Chen's expression changed. He was extremely shocked. The sprite sealed in the godly king's soul essence seemed to be in a deep sleep. It was not aggressive at all. The ripples that spread out seemed to come from the sprite's breath. At this moment, Chen saw the godly king's soul essence with his own eyes. This was enough to prove the value of this mine. The godly king's soul essence did not move at all. It seemed to be because it had not been mined yet. After coming here, the spirit-devouring king grass was very careful. The light that covered its body became very unstable. It seemed to be under a strong attack. Chen felt a sense of uneasiness from the ripples it emitted. "Can we go any deeper?" Chen, who was covered in light, asked. The spirit-devouring king grass was hesitant. It seemed to be very worried. Chen said, "Then let me go here." The spirit-devouring king grass withdrew its light and Chen's figure appeared. The moment he appeared, the ripples that spread out in all directions fell on him. The ripples directly entered his sea of consciousness. Like layers of waves, they attacked his soul. Chen's face turned pale. He was very surprised to be suddenly attacked by a soul attack. However, his soul power was extremely strong. After he reacted, it formed an even stronger ripple that suppressed this strange power. After his soul completely suppressed this ripple, Chen looked at the godly king's soul essence in front of him. He found that it was still in a deep sleep. Could it be that these godly king's soul essences rely on soul attacks? Chen flew forward. The spirit-devouring king grass followed him. He came to the front of the godly king's soul essence and reached out to check it. His palm fell on the godly king's soul essence. The soul essence trembled slightly. The sleeping spirit seemed to have woken up. A strong ripple appeared from within. At the same time, a sharp attack directly entered his sea of consciousness and attacked his soul. This was the attack of the godly king's soul essence. Although Chen was prepared, this attack still caused some trouble for him. It could be seen that the other divine generals were only 9th-grade divine generals. When they suddenly encountered such an attack, they would definitely die. After Chen neutralized this power, the godly king's soul essence in front of him tried to escape. Chen reached out his palm. Lightning flashed in his palm and fell on the godly king's soul essence. Buzz! Another tremor came from the godly king's soul essence. However, this time it was not an attack. It was restrained. The spirit in the soul essence seemed to have lost its consciousness and gradually quieted down. The light on the surface of the crystal also seemed to have dimmed. The godly king's soul essence lost its powerful attack and turned into a crystal that could absorb energy. Looking at the changes of the godly king's soul essence, Chen was very surprised. He directly put it away. When he put away the godly king's soul essence, the space in front of Chen suddenly distorted and a space appeared. Chapter 3070. What appeared in front of Chen was a huge space. In this space, there were countless crystals the size of a human head. Inside these crystals, there were small elf-like creatures. Without a doubt, these were the godly king's soul essences. This was the first time Chen had seen a godly king's soul essence, but it didn't mean that he didn't know anything about it. In a mineral vein, the godly king's soul essences were the best of the best. There were usually not many of them. There were usually only a few pieces or one piece. But now, what appeared in front of Zichen were countless godly king's soul essences. This was obviously abnormal. This was because so many godly king's soul essences couldn't exist in the same space at the same time. This was because the spiritual energy in the space couldn't reach it and couldn't be maintained. He looked ahead. These slumbering godly king's soul essences extended into the depths. He couldn't detect them with his spiritual senses, so he could only see them with his eyes. Behind him, the spirit-devouring king grass trembled slightly. In Zichen's perception, it was excited, but more than that, it was afraid. "What are you afraid of?" Zichen asked. The spirit-devouring king grass couldn't communicate with him, so he could only go ahead and observe. Zichen walked in front of the godly king's soul essences. After a slight hesitation, he opened his world. He didn't know what was in the depths and what the spirit-devouring king grass was afraid of. However, under such abnormal circumstances, it was very likely that there was danger ahead. Therefore, it shouldn't be a problem to collect more godly king's soul essences. When the world opened, it was like a black hole that devoured the godly king's soul essences. The moment it entered the world, these slumbering godly king's soul essences came to life as if they had been extracted. Waves of powerful fluctuations spread in the world. However, to Zichen, these attacks obviously couldn't pose a threat. They were all suppressed by the power of the natural order. Powerful auras surged in the world, but they couldn't do anything to Zichen. One by one, the godly king's soul essences were collected by him. This was an opportunity, a truly great opportunity. Looking at the disappearing god king's soul essences, the spirit-devouring king grass was once again agitated. Clearly, these things would be of great use to its advancement. Now that he had collected so many godly king soul essences, it was already an amazing resource for Zichen. Therefore, even if he left now, his harvest would still be great. As he continued forward, Zichen suddenly saw something appear in front of him. It was the only other thing that had appeared in this place filled with God King's soul essences. He stopped collecting the godly king's soul essence and flew forward. Everything there was completely reflected in his eyes. It was a weapon that was black in color and had traces of rust on its surface. It was a large black bow without an arrow. There were carvings on the body of the bow. It was a type of beast that Zichen had never seen before. It was extremely mighty. At that moment, the black bow was floating silently in front of him. There was a domain-like space around it, and outside this domain were pieces of godly king soul essences. It looked like these soul essences were protecting the bow. After seeing the black bow, the spirit-devouring king grass's body trembled involuntarily. Clearly, this was the source of its fear. Zichen looked around and did not see any other danger. But what was the spirit-devouring king grass afraid of? Was it just that unmanned bow without an arrow? In Zichen's perception, some weapons were born with a murderous aura. It seemed natural that a plant like the spirit-devouring kinggrass could sense it. However, the spirit-devouring kinggrass was not inexperienced. It had seen a few of the 9 extremes weapons. Facing this black bow, it should not be so weak. After looking around again and finding no other danger, Zichen decided to go and get the bow. For it to appear here, the bow must be extraordinary. Despite the spirit-devouring kinggrass warning, Zichen still decided to take a look. This weapon was extraordinary. If he could obtain it, it would definitely increase his battle strength. He left the spirit-devouring kinggrass outside to prevent any accidents. Then, he flashed into the space. Everything went smoothly. He did not encounter any obstacles. The black bow did not emit any terrifying aura. It seemed to be a very ordinary weapon. Zichen used his spiritual senses to check the surroundings. Still, he did not sense any danger. Thus, he walked forward. He did not walk fast. He was very careful. When he was only 1 step away from the black bow, he still did not sense any danger. There were no other restrictions around the black bow. Clearly, this was a weapon that could be easily obtained. Am I really that lucky? Zichen thought to himself. Then, he reached out and grabbed the black bow. The moment his palm came into contact with the black longbow, The longbow lit up and Zichen felt a sharp pain in his palm. The black bow in front of him disappeared. In its place was a strange beast with a horn. It looked like a chileen. At this moment, it opened its mouth and bit Zichen's arm. A strange force, like poison, entered Zichen's body. Zichen gradually lost control of his body and fell into paralysis. Swoosh! 2 leaves flew from behind and covered Zichen's body. They wrapped around him and pulled him backward. Zichen's body was pulled out of the space. At the same time, the unknown heavenly beast that was formed by the black bow was also pulled out because it was biting Zichen's arm. Zichen's powerful physical strength was useless at this moment. He was directly bitten by the unknown heavenly beast. His body could no longer move even though he had already walked out of the space. Buzz! Buzz! Just as Zichen came out, the King of God's soul essences around him began to vibrate. Then, they immediately flew toward him and entered the unknown heavenly beast's body. The aura released by the heavenly beast became stronger and stronger. The spirit-devouring king grass wrapped around Zichen's body and released it. The slender leaves were like a straight spear, piercing toward the heavenly beast. The attack of the spirit-devouring king grass was extremely sharp. It was extremely lethal even to a third-grade king. However, its attack was unable to break through the defense of the heavenly beast. Swoosh! 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 Although it knew that its attack was ineffective, the spirit-devouring king grass continued to attack. At the same time, it sent out waves of energy to warn Zichen. Zichen could not move. His body was paralyzed as if he was poisoned. However, his mind was not affected at all. Looking at the surrounding soul essences entering the strange heavenly beast's body and feeling its aura getting stronger and stronger, he knew that if this continued, it would be extremely troublesome. Chapter 3071. In front of the spirit-devouring king grass, Zichen and the strange heavenly beast had disappeared. The spirit-devouring king grass, which knew Zichen very well, knew where Zichen had gone. The divine king's soul essences that were previously restless had now dimmed down once again. The spirit-devouring king grass immediately rushed forward and stuck its roots into one of the god king soul essences. Then, it began to devour its energy. The other god king soul essences floated there quietly, not even releasing any ripples. Zichen returned to his own world, and the strange heavenly beast followed him here. As soon as he appeared, the divine clone was right in front of him, and he punched out at the heavenly beast. The deity clone's fist was infused with netherworld energy, and it hit the heavenly beast's head. Accompanied by an energy explosion, the strange heavenly beast finally let go and flew away. The deity clone's fist was powerful enough, and being struck directly by it, even Wang Sanpin would die. Yet, this strange heavenly beast did not seem to have any reaction at all. Its body fell to the ground and rolled away. However, it quickly stood up again, shook its head, and charged at Zichen again. Buzz! In front of Zichen, a ray of rule light fell and formed a ripple barrier, blocking the deity clone. The heavenly beast stretched out its sharp claws and struck forward. Accompanied by an explosion, the ripple barrier in front of Zichen shattered, and the powerful attack landed on his body. Swoosh! Zichen's body dissipated, leaving only an afterimage. Damn you, how dare you disturb my sleep? At this moment, a cold and angry voice came from the strange heavenly beast. I don't care who you are, I will kill you. The heavenly beast suddenly turned around, and its sharp claws slashed through the sky again. Zichen's figure was hit. His body slid backwards, and a bloody wound appeared on his chest. His physical cultivation technique was the lightning body, and it was powerful enough. He had never seen it being broken in one strike. The opponent's strength was far beyond Zichen's expectations. The divine avatar arrived from the other side and threw another punch. His target was still his opponent's head. Damned netherworld, you think you can kill me? The heavenly beast let out a furious roar, and its figure strangely disappeared. When it reappeared, it was at the side of the divine avatar, and its sharp claws struck the divine avatar's head. With a bang, the clone was sent flying. Its head was already badly mutilated. Hey! I didn't manage to destroy you, netherworld. There was a look of surprise in the heavenly beast's eyes. Then, it asked in confusion, "Who is Yu Ming? Why would I say that you are the netherworld?" The divine avatar retreated, allowing blood to flow from the wound on his head. He stared at the other in fear. If it weren't for the fact that he had the heavenly god's bone, the previous blow would have split his head open. This strange heavenly beast stood there, not attacking immediately. Its originally cold eyes were now filled with doubt. "Who am I? Who are you? Where is this place? I was sleeping earlier. Why am I sleeping here?" Zichen looked at the other party, and his expression became very serious. This was the heavenly beast that had been manifested by the black longbow. Not only was it ridiculously powerful, but it also seemed to have an extraordinary origin. It was called the Netherworld Doppelganger, and the power of the doppelganger was the power of the Netherworld. "Who are you?" Zichen stared at the other party and asked in a low voice. "Who am I?" The heavenly beast turned around and looked at Zichen. "How would I know who I am? No, it was you who woke me up. You must know who I am. You want to harm me, don't you?" Hearing the other party's words, Zichen felt that this heavenly beast might have a problem with its brain. At that moment, the other party shouted coldly, "You must want to harm me. You must die." After saying that, it charged at Zichen again. Zichen snorted coldly and said, "I don't care if you're really stupid or just pretending to be. Since you've come in, don't even think about coming out." After saying that, Zichen activated the world's precepts. Streaks of precepts power descended from the sky. A part of it pressed down on the heavenly beast, while the other part formed a spatial seal, trapping the heavenly beast within. The heavenly beast was suppressed by the precepts, and it continued to charge around violently. Its attacks were so powerful that it almost shook Zichen's world. Zichen stared at the other party indifferently. Even more powerful precepts power descended from the sky, suppressing the other party. The heavenly beast saw that it was unable to break through the spatial seal, and gradually calmed down. Just as Zichen thought that the other party had given up, the other party's horn suddenly released a powerful light. In the next moment, a loud shout rang out, "Heaven Splitter!" A ray of light flew out from the horn and landed on the spatial seal. A powerful force instantly destroyed many of Zichen's precepts, and then the spatial seal was torn apart. The unicorn heavenly beast that looked like a Chileen flew out from it. "Die!" After it came out, it charged at Zichen. Boom! On Zichen's body, energy roared. The power of the lightning body instantly erupted, forming a destructive wave. A dazzling light filled the surroundings. "This is the power of the lightning body. Who are you? How did you master the lightning body?" The heavenly beast that charged forward spoke again. However, before he could answer, the heavenly beast said again, "What is the power of the lightning body? Why do I know? Do I know the lightning body?" Although it was very abnormal, its attack did not stop. It directly came in front of Zichen and clawed down. Zichen activated the lightning body with all his might, and struck out with his strongest lightning explosion. Boom! The power of the lightning body exploded, forming a destructive wave that swept towards the heavenly beast. "This is the lightning explosion of the lightning body. Who are you?" The heavenly beast roared again, but it was still intact. "Go to hell!" At this moment, the divine clone appeared from the other side, came to the side of the heavenly beast, and slashed down. This was the stone saber that Zichen had obtained in the past. "This saber looks very familiar. Is it that saber?" The stone saber struck the heavenly beast, and with a violent roar of energy, the heavenly beast was sent flying. "I don't care who you are. My head hurts so much now, so I have to kill you." The heavenly beast was sent flying, and it shook its head again. Its eyes became very cruel, and with a shake of its body, it transformed into a black longbow again. "Heaven Splitter!" In the sky, a loud shout faintly sounded. The black longbow was automatically pulled into a full moon. In Zichen's world, all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered towards the black longbow. An extremely tyrannical aura was released. At the same time, this aura was filled with a sense of danger. An arrow completely composed of energy appeared on the longbow. In the next moment, the bowstring trembled, and the arrow pierced through the sky, heading straight for Zichen. One after another, the rule force fell, forming a ripple barrier in front of Zichen. Smack, smack, smack. Chapter 3072. Looking at the incoming arrow, Zichen felt an unprecedented sense of deadly crisis. Countless rule power descended from the sky and landed in front of him, forming a ripple barrier. However, those ripple barriers were completely useless. They directly exploded. His figure flashed and he was already thousands of miles away. During this time, countless rule power descended. The barrier formed by the rule power was Zichen's strongest defense. Bang! An arrow hole appeared. The arrow instantly penetrated the countless defenses within thousands of miles and arrived in front of Zichen. Zichen's body disappeared and turned in another direction. The arrow in front of him instantly changed direction and charged at him again. It seemed that the arrow would not dissipate until it hit its target. Zichen's face was filled with horror. He did not expect this heavenly beast to be so powerful. As his figure flickered again and again, he saw the black longbow being drawn into a full moon again. Immediately after, a second arrow flew over. This arrow was even faster, as if it had teleported through space. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of Zichen. Facing this second arrow, Zichen could not resist at all. He could only activate his thunder physique to form the strongest defense. At the same time, he also mobilized all the rule power in front of him to form a barrier. The two arrows arrived one after another, piercing through Zichen's layers of defense and arriving in front of Zichen. At this moment, Zichen crossed his arms. Lightning filled the surface of his body, and his mind was blank. Drops of cold sweat fell from Zichen's forehead. Lightning flashed on his defense, bright and dazzling. His defense was strong, but it could not be stronger than the previous rule power defense. However, he did not wait for the arrow to break through his defense and penetrate his body. He was even ready to make a move for his soul to escape. The arrow stopped in front of Zichen. The light continued to flash and spin, causing the space to distort. It proved that its current state was still terrifying. However, the arrow did not move forward again. Instead, it stopped outside the lightning defense. At the same time, the second arrow did the same. Zichen was stunned. Did the other party let him go? To be able to control the arrows in such a situation, this level of control was truly amazing. However, as he turned to look at the heavenly beast, and saw the shock in its eyes, Zichen knew that was not the case. The other party still wanted to kill him, but he didn't know why the arrows suddenly stopped. With a shake of its body, it turned back into a black longbow and shot out another arrow. The arrow pierced through the air and arrived in front of Zichen. This time, Zichen did not set up a defensive barrier. The arrow stopped in front of him and hovered outside the barrier. Damn it, how did this happen? An exasperated voice came from the black longbow. Then, another arrow flew out, but the result was the same. A series of arrows shot out in quick succession, all of them circling around Zichen, not daring to take another step forward. Finally, the heavenly beast from the bow cried out, "You are the successor of the lightning physique. I remember now, I can break through this world, but I can't hurt the successor of the lightning physique." The arrows around Zichen all dispersed, allowing him to breathe a sigh of relief. Just a moment ago, he had felt a strong threat of death. The heavenly beast named Potian was now dejected, and its aura was no longer violent. It said to Zichen, "Kid, you should be glad. I can kill all living things in this world, but I can't kill the successor of the lightning physique." The lightning around Zichen's body dissipated. He looked at the heavenly beast, but he did not know what to say. His divine clone was far away. He had already fled because as long as his divine clone was alive, the soul of his true body would not be destroyed. This was also the double preparation that Zichen had made when he felt the danger. In another place, the queen ant's eyes were full of vigilance. Even though it was far away, it still felt the threat of the arrow. "How did you find me?" After a long silence, the heavenly beast named Potian spoke. "I found you by following the mine." Zichen said, "I noticed something strange about the mine, so I came to take a look. I didn't expect to see a bow." "What do you mean by a bow?" "It's Lord Potian." Potian said unhappily. "Yes, I saw Lord Potian, who had turned into a bow, Zichen said. Seemingly satisfied with Zichen's attitude, Potian nodded and said, "So, you don't know me? What's my name?" Zichen shook his head and said, "Even now, I know nothing about Lord." Potian turned his head and looked at Yu Ming in the distance and said, "What's the matter with him? And why does he have that blade in his hand?" "He is my doppelganger. I found that blade in a cave." "What kind of cave would have such a blade?" "The last level of the Lightning Divine Palace, the place called the Abyss." "What Lightning Divine Palace? Is it very famous?" "I've never heard of it." Seeing that Zichen was about to explain the Lightning Divine Palace, Potian waved his claw and said, "Forget it, Lord Potian has no interest in knowing that place. Being able to find that blade is your fortune." "Is this the world you created?" "Yes." Zichen nodded his head. "Seems like it's not bad. I'll stop here for now. If you encounter any danger, you can trouble me to help you. However, I'm currently very weak, so I won't help you for free. You'll have to pay me." "What kind of payment?" Zichen asked. "There's nothing good in your world, just that thing. 8 or 10 of them will do." Potian pointed at the God King's soul essence and said. Zichen looked like he was in a difficult position. "If you want Lord Potian to help, that's the minimum requirement." Heavenbreaker smiled complacently, and then his figure flashed and arrived at the top of a mountain. He glanced at the queen and as a wisp of disdain flashed through his eyes, "We can't." Then, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. Actually, Potian was unable to relax at all. He even felt that it was very dangerous. From the blankness he felt when he first woke up, he was able to remember many things now. Perhaps he might have forgotten some other things, but he couldn't forget the most important thing. If you meet the successor of the lightning physique one day, you'll follow him, protect him, and protect him. In other words, it was a servant. However, Potian was obviously unwilling to be a servant of such a weak little fellow. Fortunately, he was smart enough to not expose this matter. Now that he could stay, he didn't need to be a servant. The corners of his mouth curled up. He was clearly smiling. Zichen didn't know what Lord Potian was thinking, but he was incomparably delighted in his heart. Because there were many God King soul essences outside, Lord Potian didn't mention it. It was probably because he didn't notice that scene when he woke up. It seemed that although he was very strong, his brain wasn't very bright. Zichen chuckled as he thought of this. Chapter 3073. Zichen didn't know what Heavenbreaker was thinking, and Heavenbreaker didn't know what Zichen was plotting. Both of them had their own thoughts, and they had a tacit understanding. With a flash of light, Zichen's figure appeared. He looked at the God King's soul essences around him, and there were still countless of them. If 8 or 10 pieces were enough to get Heavenbreaker to act once, then the God King's soul essences here were enough for him to act many times. After isolating Heavenbreaker's area, Zichen opened his world and began to collect the God King's soul essences. He didn't know where these God King's soul essences came from, and whether or not it was because of Heavenbreaker, who had an abnormal brain. However, since he had discovered them, then the resources here were all his. When collecting the God King's soul essences, Zichen had done a very good job of keeping it a secret, so Heavenbreaker didn't know. Because his world was infinitely large, even if it was limited, it could still avoid Heavenbreaker's senses. The spirit-devouring King Grass was refining the God King's soul essences, so Zichen didn't disturb it. With the suppression of his power of laws, the God King's soul essences were quickly collected. The spiritual energy fog outside the mine grew thicker and thicker. Everyone stared at the mine below, and their expressions became more and more serious. This was because Zichen had been in there for a long time, but the spiritual energy fog showed no signs of dissipating. Su Mengyaro could sense the spirit-devouring King Grass's aura. As long as the spirit-devouring King Grass's aura existed, she believed that Zichen was fine. After waiting for a long time, everyone noticed that the fog below was gradually dissipating, and no more fog was coming out of the mine. Everyone's expressions changed, and they waited patiently. When the fog completely dissipated, Zichen appeared in the mine. "What's underground?" Everyone came forward and asked curiously. Zichen didn't answer immediately. Instead, He glanced at the miners and said, "The danger has been resolved. Everyone, continue." The miners all breathed a sigh of relief when they heard this, and then they entered the mine again. Now that the Nightmare faction didn't lack resources, their mining rewards were raised again, and this made them very motivated. "The harvest this time is great. Let's go," Chen said to the others. After leaving behind a few people to guard the area, the others headed for the Nightmare faction's base. After returning to the encampment, Chen took out some God King's soul essences. This was the first time everyone had seen the Godly King's soul essence. They were all very curious. Tyrant's eyes were shining brightly as he looked at the Godly King's soul essence. "I've already taken all the soul essences inside. Although this mine is still very big, it doesn't have any more value," Chen said. "Are there many of these soul essences?" Su Mengyao asked curiously. Chen nodded and said, "A lot. It's enough for us to break through again." Everyone was overjoyed when they heard this. Next, Chen gave everyone 2 Godly King soul essences for them to refine. At the same time, he told Su Mengyao that she could use the spirit-devouring king grass to investigate. Its special ability allowed it to detect the size of the underground mine. Su Mengyao had no objection to this. The spirit-devouring king grass was like a fish in water when it came to this world. There should be nothing that could hurt it now. After giving the spirit-devouring king grass a few Godly King soul essences, it left the underground. Next, everyone started to refine the Godly King's soul essences and strive to break through again. However, Su Mengyao did not have the time. She still had to buy resources from other factions. After hearing about the Nightmare faction, more Divine Tribe factions were willing to come here to trade. After all, the harvest here was 100 times more than what they had before. The Kerry faction also sent people here. Just as Su Mengyao said, they would earn very little if they traded at this price. However, as long as the quantity was high, the profit would still be considerable. Once all the resources mined by the Divine Tribe factions in the outer region were gathered to the Kerry faction, the difference in the resources they would earn would be a terrifying figure. Because the Kerry faction had allied with the Nightmare faction, many factions felt pressured even though they did not have any substantial improvement in their battle strength. Apart from that, the second biggest impact on them was that the Divine Tribe factions in the outer region were gradually breaking away from their control. Previously, they would go there every half a year and obtain a lot of resources each time. However, the resources given to them were very little now. There were even some that directly told them that the resources were not mined. As for the reason, naturally, they could find out. They gave all the resources to the Nightmare faction. Then, the Nightmare faction gave the resources to the Kerry faction. It was equivalent to cutting off their source of income. Although they controlled many high-quality mineral veins, the cheap labor in the outer region still occupied a large portion of the resources. Because the rewards were very little, the harvest was very big. After some discussion, even though the natives had slightly increased the exchange price, how could it compare to the normal price offered by the Nightmare faction? Therefore, the resources they exchanged were still very little. The Divine Tribe factions that were close to the Nightmare faction completely gave up on providing resources to the natives. All the resources they obtained were traded with the Nightmare faction. The more resources they obtained, the more superb crystal they would get. The chances of breaking through were also greater. Therefore, they were very motivated. Seeing that this continued, all the Divine Tribe factions were about to break away from their control. While some of the natives were anxious, they had to think of a more radical method. This method was to kill people by force. After killing a group of people, the Divine Tribe factions that had broken away from their control became much more obedient. They did not dare to trade with the Nightmare faction anymore. At the same time, they sent the news to the Nightmare faction, wanting to seek help. Such situations were not rare. Therefore, Su Mengyao went to find Chen, who was refining the King of God's soul essence. He had not finished refining the King of God's soul essence. When Chen heard the news, he frowned. This matter was not just about the Nightmare faction's resources. It was about the natives' attitude toward the Divine Tribe. If he did not express his stance this time, then all the factions would follow suit. In this way, naturally, no divine tribe would dare to trade with him. Similarly, the Keri faction could only obtain resources from him. The divine tribe's advancement would be much slower. Which faction is it exactly? I'll go and take a look, said Zichen. Ruger, Dawson, and some other factions were attacked. Their leaders are all dead, said Su Mengyao. The people from those factions are now outside, said Su Mengyao. I'll go with them. Chapter 3074. The people who had come to ask for help hadn't expected Zichen, the leader of the Nightmare faction, to come in person. This made them very excited. Let's go to your factions and have a look. Zichen looked at them and said, let's go to the nearest faction first. The nearest faction was called Dawson, but it was still very far away. It took them half a month to get here. On the way back, Zichen teleported with them. Their speed was extremely fast, and it took them less than a day. This wasn't a small faction, and they had more people than the Nightmare faction. When they arrived, several natives were standing in the air, shouting at the Protoss. Zichen appeared with his people. The Dawson Protoss pointed at the natives and said, "My lord, it's them." At this moment, the natives felt the fluctuations behind them. When they turned around and saw Zichen, they were stunned at first, but soon guessed Zichen's identity. Their expressions changed. "Which family are you from?" Zichen looked at the natives and asked. The few natives who were still acting high and mighty before now had fear written all over their faces, and their bodies were trembling. When the gods below caught sight of this, their expressions turned extremely agitated. The leader of the Nightmare faction had come in person. It was easy to get rid of these natives. "My lord, we are from the Mika faction," said one of the natives in fear. Zichen nodded and said, "Go back and tell your families to prepare for war." "Huh!" The native's expression changed. "We don't take the initiative to provoke others. Since you insist on fighting, then let's fight. You go back first. We'll be there soon." The natives' expressions changed, but they didn't dare say anything. They hurriedly left. In the faction below, all the Protoss cheered. "My lord, we are willing to submit to the Nightmare faction. The resources we exchange will be halved." A second-grade king flew up into the sky, came to Zichen's side, and saluted respectfully. The other Protoss looked at Zichen expectantly. As long as Zichen agreed, they believed that no natives would dare to bully them. Even if they had to lose half of their resources, they were willing to do so because they would no longer have to worry about the future. "We'll talk about this after this incident is over. If anyone in the team is good at setting up teleportation circles, we can set up a teleportation circle that leads directly to the Nightmare faction. Even if there's danger, we'll be able to get there as soon as possible," Zichen said. "Yes." This leader nodded, his expression excited. If the Nightmare faction built a teleportation array, it would be no different from relying on them. As for the construction of teleportation arrays, there were naturally such talents in the forces. Following this, Zichen went to a few other factions. The indigenous residents there were all chased away by him, and he did not kill anyone. Aside from Mika's faction, there were also two other factions, namely Chi and Jonah. Their forces were slightly weaker than Parry's, but they had a rank 4 overseeing them. After inquiring about the three factions, Zichen returned to the Nightmare faction. "Phoebe, prepare a complete map for me. Mark out the properties of Mika's, Chi's, and Jonah's forces." Phoebe was the main contact between the Nightmare faction and the Klee family. After hearing Zichen's words, he immediately arranged for the spiritual eagle to send a message back. The head of the Klee family had already heard some rumors. After seeing Phoebe's message, he did not hesitate and immediately sent everything related to the three factions to Zichen. In the following month, the mineral veins of the three factions were all plundered by Zichen. The indigenous residents guarding the mineral veins were all killed. Such a scene caused an uproar among the indigenous residents. At this moment, Zichen appeared in the city controlled by the Mika family. He was alone, but no one dared to underestimate him because he represented a strong army of dark heavenly ants. "Zichen, during this period of time, you have repeatedly attacked our mineral veins. What is the meaning of this?" On the city wall, the head of the Mika family said. "What do I mean? Don't you know? Chen replied coldly. Since you insist on declaring war, then let's do it. As soon as he finished speaking, the world behind him opened up. An endless stream of dark heavenly ants rushed out and quickly entered the ground. In a short moment, the light barrier in front of the city started to tremble. Clearly, it had been attacked underground. On the city wall, the indigenous residents of the Mika family all had a change in expression. They had never imagined that Chen would be so decisive. Stop. Let's talk things over, the head of the Mika family shouted. Behind Chen, the dark heavenly ants were still descending. They had no intention of stopping, and the light barrier was distorting even more violently. On the city wall, the head of the Mika family turned very pale. If the Great Barrier Array was broken by these dark heavenly ants, then the Mika family would be in danger. They might even be destroyed because of this. He cursed Chen in his heart. However, he gritted his teeth unwillingly and said, Chen, this is a misunderstanding. We are willing to pay a price. Moreover, we promise that we will not forcefully interfere with those factions. They can trade with whoever they want. Chen stood there and still did not respond. His expression was cold and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. If the battle with Parry's faction was to give himself a foothold, then this action was to make an example of him and get things done once and for all. Seeing that Chen did not respond, the indigenous residents of the Mika family on the city wall had a drastic change in expression. Their eyes were filled with fear. Boom. It was unknown how many dark heavenly ants were attacking the great city protecting array. Following a loud explosion, the great city protecting array shattered. In the next moment, there were miserable cries in the city. It was as though the world was about to be destroyed. Many dark heavenly ants entered the city of the Mika family. The indigenous residents of the city screamed in fear. These dark heavenly ants did not launch an attack. On the city wall, the head of the Mika family was covered in cold sweat. In that moment, he had already given up hope. Outside the city wall, Chen said coldly, "You indigenous people have oppressed the god race for so many years. You should be satisfied. I don't care if you were ordered by others or if you were truly greedy. Everything is over. If you want to obtain the resources of the god race, then trade according to the normal price. If anyone tries to force a trade, then wait for the arrival of war." After saying that, Chen looked coldly at the head of the Mika family. The other party waved his hand repeatedly. Then, carts of superb crystal were sent out. Although Chen did not choose to attack, he would naturally take the compensation that the other party gave. Chapter 3075. The world wasn't very big and there were only a few publicly recognized cities. The rest were private cities. What happened in the Mika force quickly spread to the other forces, including the royal forces in the Sky Region city. When they heard this news, they were naturally enraged. This was because Chen was provoking all of the indigenous people. However, in the current situation, unless they united all the natives, they wouldn't be able to kill Chen. On the other hand, if they couldn't kill Chen in the battle, they would definitely be annihilated. Hence, although they felt that their dignity was challenged, they had no other way to deal with Chen. Hence, they could only give up on exploiting the divine tribe. When Chen arrived, the other two forces obediently took out their resources and apologized seriously. All of this is the doing of the Klee force. After compensating the resources and calming down Chen's anger, the forces were unwilling to accept the loss of resources. Hence, they turned their attention to the Klee family. However, Chen was now in an alliance with the Klee family. Hence, many forces were wary of him. Previously, the Mika family was almost annihilated. Before the dark heavenly ants, those grand arrays did not have much effect at all. No one dared to use force against the Klee force. However, the Klee force wasn't good at fighting but negotiation. During this period of time, there were many visitors to the Klee family. These visitors came from powerful backgrounds and their intentions were clear. They were Jean Li. They wanted the Klee family to give them some benefits, such as lowering the price of the resources. The Klee family's attitude towards this was naturally firm. Impossible. How long can Chen stay in this world? How long are you going to stay? After he leaves, what else do you have to rely on? A leader of a force that was similar to the Klee force said, Brunei, you have to think clearly about the key point of this matter. Your cooperation with Chen is only temporary, but we have been here for generations. Are you willing to go against all of us for a temporary ally? Clevenly suppressed the anger in his heart and said, double the price is something that Chen and I have already discussed. If I dare to accept this price, why can't you? I only collect resources from Chen's nightmare faction. You can use the same price to collect resources from other factions. I believe that no one will refuse. As far as I know, Chen is only buying resources at the same price. When the person heard Chris's words, his face turned ugly. Chris's forces were buying resources at twice the price because they were in an alliance with Chen. If they were to buy resources at twice the price, they would be fools. They weren't even willing to pay the same price, which was why they had come to Chris to negotiate. As long as they lowered the price, Chen's price would naturally be lowered as well. In fact, to put it bluntly, they had always been buying resources at a low price, so they felt that the resources mined by the Protoss were worth this price. They were naturally unwilling to buy at a higher price, which was why they had come to negotiate. This time, naturally, they had left on bad terms because Chris's forces would never agree to this. If they did, they would inevitably offend Chen. Moreover, those who had come to tell him about this did not have good intentions. Perhaps they would turn around and negotiate with Chen at double the price. Therefore, he was not stupid. Naturally, he would not agree. It was just that he had to consider what these factions had told him. Once Chen left, Chris's forces would be targeted by other factions. At that time, what would Chris's forces do? Confused, he could only go to his family's rank 4 to resolve his doubts. The rank 4 of his family was a wise old man. He looked at Chris and heard his doubts. He said, this is indeed a problem. It is not only something we need to consider, but also something Chen should consider. If he leaves this area, what will happen to the force he created, and the god race that will follow? Chris sat and listened. The rank 4 continued, if he only stays here for a few hundred years, I believe it will not be enough to create an army that can fight against the experts of the major factions. However, if he stays here for more than 1,000 years, he may not be willing. But even if it is only a few hundred years, it is still a very good opportunity for us. Because if we monopolize all the opportunities created by the Protoss in this area for a few hundred years, the resources we will obtain will be a very frightening number. If we use it to cultivate our foundation, I believe we can cultivate several rank 4. At that time, we may not have the strength to invade other factions, but we will have the strength to protect ourselves. Chris nodded. Every rank 4 was a foundation. If there were more rank 4, naturally, their foundation would be more. But once Chen leaves, our enemy may be all the factions. Maybe they will join forces to deal with us, said Chris. The rank 4 old man nodded and said, we can't rule out this possibility. However, when Chen leaves, he will already be rank 3. At this level, do you think he will feel pressured to fight against a rank 4? Chris's expression changed. He said in a hoarse voice, what do you mean, ancestor? The rank 4 said, it is not what I mean, but whether or not Chen has this idea. If he wants the Protoss to develop well, before he leaves, it is not impossible to carry out a great purge of all the rank 4 in this area. Exterminating all of them is not impossible. There was a look of shock in Kelly's eyes. If Chen had really done that, then the Kelly faction would have been the most powerful faction in the world. With so many rank 4 foundations, no force would dare to challenge them. At that time, they would become a royal faction in one fell swoop. Seeing Chris's excitement, the rank 4 old man said, for us, this is also an opportunity to rise, but it could also be a disaster. Whether or not it will succeed depends on what Chen thinks. You can look for Chen about this and tell him your concerns. Of course, if he is willing to leave the dark heavenly ant behind when he leaves, then all the dangers will be easily solved. In these years, we should also try to establish good relations with some royal factions. It would be best if they are from the craftsmen or the soldiers because there is not much conflict between them. After hearing the rank 4 old man's words, Chris was suddenly enlightened. Therefore, He went directly to the Nightmare faction to look for Chen to talk about the future of the Nightmare faction and the Chris faction. When Chris arrived at the Nightmare faction, he also brought a few dozen people with him. These people were all there to collect resources. Chapter 3076. Clevenley's arrival surprised Chen greatly. He talked about the recent events and also expressed the worries in his heart. Chen had never thought about the Nightmare faction's future. Furthermore, he was not sure how long he could stay here. Now, he had to consider this problem. After Clevenley finished talking about this matter, he directly left. He did not come this time to get an answer, but to let Chen know about this matter and then make plans in advance. Now, the Nightmare faction and Clevenley were already tied to the same warship. Su Mengyaro walked into the living room and saw Chen frowning. She asked in puzzlement, "What's wrong? Did other factions make a move against the Clevenley faction?" Chen shook his head and said, "No. Clevenley came to ask me, if we leave, what will happen to the Nightmare faction?" Su Mengyaro was stunned when she heard that. Her beautiful eyes also had confusion, but it disappeared in an instant. She said, "This is indeed a problem that we need to consider. In the past, we wanted to nurture a God-King army. But now, we already have the dark heavenly ants. It can be considered to have fulfilled our expectations in advance. Furthermore, to nurture a large army, it will take a very long time. However, we can't leave yet. Because once we leave, the God race will once again face the situation of being suppressed." Chen nodded. This was what he was worried about. But if they waited for these God race to become powerful, it would take several hundred years. Could it be that they really had to wait here for several hundred years in vain? This was a problem that troubled Chen. Fortunately, they had not broken through yet at present. They did not need to deliberately care about this problem. But now that they had the God King soul essence, breaking through was only a matter of time. The Nightmare faction became very lively recently because Chen already said that those with the ability could build a teleportation array here. This way, it would be convenient to teleport back and forth for transactions. Even if there was danger, they could also come here to take refuge. Although Chen did not approve of them attaching themselves to the Nightmare faction, this action was already not much different from attaching. Hence, all the factions expressed their willingness to reduce the rewards for exchanging resources. In the end, they were rejected by Chen. They had already earned quite a lot, so he did not want to squeeze them dry anymore. There was strength in numbers. In just a few months, one teleportation array after another was set up outside the Nightmare faction. Although they weren't built in the Nightmare faction, with experts like Chen around, there wouldn't be any problems. At the same time, within the Nightmare faction, Su Mengyaro had implemented a point system. Everyone's rewards could be exchanged for points, and the points could be exchanged for resources, including the slots to awaken. The time limit was 50 years. If they could awaken within 50 years, that would be for the best. If they couldn't, then it would be over. After all, there were many God Kings in the various powers. In the end, there would definitely be many people who would be able to gather enough points. When Su Mengyaro showed some rules of the point system to Chen nodded with satisfaction. With Su Mengyao's help, he could save a lot of trouble. After Li Ari wakes up, I want to open the awakening altar to the public. If you want a spot, you have to exchange it with the superm crystal. Su Mengyaro said. That's good too. Chen nodded in agreement. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed. In these 5 years, no natives dared to threaten or kill the divine race. Obviously, the divine race's life was much more comfortable than before, and they had obtained more resources. With the superm crystal to refine, everyone's speed of breaking through became faster. The divine race's life was more comfortable, but the same couldn't be said for the natives. Without the divine race's oppression, the natives' speed of obtaining resources became very slow. Although the mineral veins they controlled were of high yield and high quality, they slowly offered a high price, but the so-called high price was not even 1/10 of what Chen offered. Naturally, no one was willing to accept it. So they slowly increased the price until it reached the normal level. Even under such circumstances, no divine race would trade with them. They couldn't beat them, nor could they scold them. This made the natives very depressed. They could only secretly hinder them, such as driving some heavenly beasts to their forces and causing them to suffer a destructive blow. When Zichen found out about this situation, he sent monk Zhong Haotian and the others to kill many natives. After that, the situation disappeared. Under such circumstances, the natives who couldn't obtain resources could only raise the price again. This price had exceeded Zichen's purchase price. Although they were unwilling, for the future development of their forces, they could only do so. Just as all the natives were waiting for the divine race to come knocking on their door, they were speechless to find that there was still no divine race to trade with them. Are these guys idiots? Our purchase price is very high. They couldn't wait for the divine race's forces to come knocking on their door, so they could only go by themselves. But still, no divine race was willing to trade with them. In desperation, they could only raise the price to 1/10. It was 1/10 higher than Zichen's purchase price. This was definitely a high price, but these natives found that the divine race still wouldn't trade with them. They would rather go to Zichen for a lower price. In the Dawson faction, a confidant looked at the leader of the Dawson faction and said, "Sir, the natives have already raised the price to 2/10. Why don't we trade with them?" The leader of the Dawson faction said indifferently, "Do the other factions trade with them? I've asked around. None. There aren't even any secret trades." The subordinate said doubtfully, "Isn't this a bit abnormal?" The leader of the Dawson faction said, "There's nothing abnormal about it. Do you think that I chose not to trade with them because I'm grateful to leader Zichen for his help in the past? Although this is one of the reasons, it's not the main reason." The confidant asked doubtfully, "Then what's the main reason?" "Because the resources we obtained from the Nightmare faction were given to the Klee faction. This faction is currently our ally, while the other factions are our enemies. Once leader Zichen leaves this world, these factions will definitely attack us again. If we trade with them now, it's equivalent to cutting off our own path of retreat. It's not just me who thinks this way. The other factions think the same. Thus, no matter how much resources they offer, we can't trade with them. Moreover, the current price we're trading with the Nightmare faction is normal. We haven't suffered a loss. Since the natives couldn't obtain the resources, they could only slowly raise the price. Thus, the price went from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50%. Under these circumstances, even though some factions could see the pros and cons, they were still tempted. Chapter 3077. The news from the Nightmare faction was about the Awakening Altar. It was the second Awakening Altar, and it would be open to all Protoss factions. As soon as the news came out, the factions that originally intended to trade with the natives immediately gave up on the idea. This indicated that everyone would have a chance to awaken. Although they would have to wait, there was finally hope. The Protoss who originally wanted to obtain resources to quickly break through to rank 3 and leave this place also changed their minds. Under such circumstances, they would definitely have a chance. Therefore, they would not cooperate with the enemy, even if the enemy offered a higher price. Even if they wanted to obtain a quota, they would have to exchange resources. Because they wanted to stay for a long time, they would not give the enemy the slightest chance to strengthen themselves. Also causing great trouble for the natives were many Protoss miners. They were slowly leaving because they would gain more if they stayed in the outer factions. The Nightmare faction spread the news because Li Ari had returned after awakening her power and told them the coordinates of the altar. After that, Li Ari was with Yi Qian and the others, chatting about things that Zichen found extremely boring but that they found extremely interesting. The room was full of chatter and laughter. Zichen could not get a word in, so he could only leave and go patrol the faction. Ever since the incident with Parry's faction, Zichen's Nightmare faction did not recruit anyone. After the quota was opened, it was always given to those in the Nightmare faction. Now that Li Ari had returned and there was another Awakening Altar available, he chose to open it up. Of course, when the news spread, Zichen would also spread the news about the earthly realm. This was because only those who had walked through the earthly realm could quickly break through. Zichen's move was also to let the other factions have more powerhouses who could fight against the heavenly beasts, so that they would have the power to protect themselves. The altar was infinitely enlarged by Li Ari. It could awaken 1,000 people at once, and it would last for 20 years. It was shorter than the Nightmare faction's 50 years. It was mainly prepared for those who had walked through the earthly realm. After all, there were countless Protoss here, and there were definitely many who had walked through the earthly realm. Under such circumstances, their factions only needed to provide resources to support them. Because of Zi-Chen's strength, the natives were completely suppressed. The Netherworld, who had been hiding in the dark, also came out from behind the scenes. They set up a temporary base and began to recruit the god race to awaken the power of the Netherworld. Relatively speaking, this was another way out for the Protoss. After walking around the Nightmare faction, Zi-Chen saw many people from the Kree family. They were all here to collect resources, and there were more than 100 of them. This was because a large amount of resources would be sent here every day. In the past few years, although the Kelly organization had been collecting resources at a high price, because the amount of resources they had obtained was very large, their harvest was much greater than before. It could be said that more than 80% of the world's resources had been sent to him, and the remaining 20% was the mineral veins of those forces. Many people were envious, but as long as Zi-Chen was still in this world, they could do nothing to Kerry's forces. Therefore, they could only raise the price again and again, but the resources they received were still very little. At the same time, in order to prevent their own miners from escaping, they could only keep increasing the reward without being able to suppress them. Even so, more Protoss still escaped. This was because there was a chance to awaken power in the outer regions, but not here. As a result, their losses were even greater. During this time, many forces had to stop working because they had no more miners, so they went to the Sky Region City to discuss this matter with the royal forces. The royal force of the Soul Race was Hob. After hearing the complaints of these Soul Race forces, the representative of Hob's forces said, "Since Zi-Chen is oppressing us so much, let's go to war." When the representatives of other forces heard this, they were all dumbfounded. After knowing how powerful Zi-Chen was, how could they dare to go to war? Seeing the expressions of these people, the representative of Hob's forces said, "Since you don't want to go to war, what do you mean? Sir, why don't we go and negotiate? It's not just Zi-Chen, but also Kerry's forces. This time, we have no resources to collect because of Kerry's forces," someone said. The representative of Hob's forces said indifferently, "Kerry's forces are naturally problematic, but they collect resources at double the price. How much are you paying? Now, if we attack Kerry's forces, it means attacking Zi-Chen. Rather than that, we might as well go to war with Zi-Chen directly. Or wait until Zi-Chen leaves and then destroy Kerry's forces with all our strength." This was the attitude of Hob's forces. Their idea of asking for help was dashed. Now, they could only rely on themselves. They could understand the attitude of Hob's forces, which was to let Kerry's forces develop. Once Zi-Chen left, they would attack Kerry's forces. At that time, they would be able to enjoy the resources that Kerry's forces had accumulated over the years. In the end, they would still be the ones to suffer. In desperation, they could only increase the reward. They increased it again and again until they were willing to pay double the price of Kerry's forces. However, this price was twice as high as Zi-Chen's purchase price. Naturally, there would be forces that would waver. At this time, Nightmare's forces increased the price to 30%. As a result, although there was still a difference of 70%, some forces were still willing to trade with Nightmare's forces. This was because Nightmare's forces were allies, while the other forces were enemies. The Aboriginals were still in a passive position. However, they could not do anything because news had spread that Zi-Chen had reached rank 3. Rank 3 was already able to leave this world, so many forces were full of expectations. If Zi-Chen left, this world would still be their world. When Clevenley heard this news, he became extremely nervous because Zi-Chen's breakthrough speed was too fast. It was so fast that he didn't expect it to be so fast. Because of Zi-Chen's breakthrough, this area was shaken. The natives were secretly happy, while the Protoss forces were very worried. Was the freedom that the Protoss had just obtained going to vanish like bubbles? This worry did not last long, as news came from Nightmare's forces. Leader Zi-Chen would not leave this area for now, and would focus on developing Nightmare's forces. When this news came out, everyone was relieved. As for the natives, naturally, they could not remain calm. Zichen had broken through to King Rank 3, but his friends had not. This force had just started developing, so he could not leave. Now, he had the King of God's essence in his hands and wanted to break through to Rank 4. Chapter 3078. Zichen was able to break through so quickly because of the God King's soul essence. He still had a lot of it on him, and it was enough for Tyrant and the others to break through. The heavenly beast called Potian had been in a deep slumber. During this period, he did not communicate with Zichen at all. After making a sound to this world and making it calm down again, Zichen came to his own world to look for the Queen Ant. He was already at rank 3 and his combat power had become stronger. The Queen Ant felt a strong threat from him. Everything was like what Zichen had said before. Once he broke through, the Queen Ant would become passive. It would no longer be a threat to him. Looking at Zichen who appeared in front of it, the Queen Ant said, "You're looking for me? There's something I need to discuss with you," Zichen said. "What is it?" The Queen Ant looked at Zichen. Zichen said, "I'm still worried about this world. Before I leave, I want to leave something for them." The Queen Ant did not say anything. Obviously, the thing that Zichen wanted to leave behind was related to it. "The thing that I want to leave behind is another dark heavenly ant army." Zichen looked at the Queen Ant and said, "I know that an existence like you can not only reproduce dark heavenly ants but also reproduce a new Queen Ant. I need a new Queen Ant." The Queen Ant's eyes flickered. Zichen continued, "When I leave this world, I'll take you with me. Therefore, you won't lose anything by leaving an Queen Ant in this world. Because you won't be able to come back after leaving. As for me, I want to take advantage of the time before I leave to nurture a new Queen Ant. This way, even after we leave, with a new Queen Ant army, the natives won't dare to start a war." The Queen Ant said indifferently, "What if I don't agree?" Zichen smiled faintly and said, "I can't think of a reason why you won't agree. If you're worried that it will surpass you in the future, then what you need to do is to control it in advance." The mother nest had been using such a trick. He believed that the Queen Ant would know it too. After all, a newly born ant queen would be very weak. There was no need to force it to recognize a master. It would be fine as long as it was guided. Even if they can leave this world one day, they will still be under your control and will not pose any threat to you. Zichen said, "Leave this world and come to our world. That world is big enough. During this time, you will need to nurture more dark heavenly ants and even the ant queen. In the future, you will be the emperor among the ant queens. You will control countless dark heavenly ants, and the scale will be much larger than it is now. How can I trust you?" the queen asked. "You don't have a choice, do you?" Zichen smiled. It was not a threat, but a fact. He couldn't guarantee that the Queen Ant wouldn't be able to do anything to him. This was the truth. Actually, Zichen couldn't do anything about it. The Queen Ant hadn't known him for a long time, so she couldn't trust him completely. After staring at each other for a long time, the Queen nodded and said, "Okay, I can give it to you." Zichen said, "I will stay here for at most 500 years. During this time, I will do my best to nurture a new ant queen. After 500 years, we will leave this place together." The Queen Ant nodded again. A bug egg appeared in front of her. After the bug egg hatched, it would be a new ant queen. Zichen looked at the bug egg and said, "I will leave the hatching to you. I am only responsible for nurturing the ant queen. It is also your job to control the ant queen. When the Queen Ant hatched a new ant queen, she would naturally be able to control it." Zichen didn't have the thought of nurturing another ant queen with independent thoughts. What he cared about was the countless dark heavenly ant army, just like the mother nest in the divine world. He didn't care about finding other ant queens to control the one in front of him. Compared to the Queen Ant's vigilance towards Zichen, Zichen was very assured of the Queen, and Zichen planned to stay here for another 500 years. He believed that in these 500 years, he would be able to nurture a group of divine race experts and an army of dark heavenly ants. At the same time, the Klee family would be able to develop better. As long as this family was around, with their support, the divine race wouldn't be annihilated. Chen obtained a new ant queen and started nurturing it with all his might. Now that the nightmare force that he was in had a lot of resources, it was very easy to nurture it. The number of dark heavenly ants around him gradually increased. At the same time, Chen and the rest were still refining the God King's soul essence, striving to improve their strength. In the next few years, Tyrant and the rest broke through to the third grade king realm. After reaching the third grade king realm, they continued to advance to the fourth grade king realm. The two awakening altars that could accommodate thousands of people opened once every few decades. Many experts awakened. After awakening, they were no weaker than the natives of the same level. Therefore, more divine race experts who were preparing to head to the other level stayed in this world. They wanted to break through before leaving. As the years passed, Chen's improvement wasn't small. He comprehended the second true meaning of extreme speed and integrated it into the second ancestral wing tablet. He comprehended the third true meaning of Saber Ancestor's tablet and integrated the third tablet into the blade. After that, it was the third true meaning of extreme speed. At the same time, when his real body broke through, his god's doppelganger also broke through. His doppelganger didn't comprehend the true meaning. He didn't know if it was because he had become netherworld. However, even if he didn't comprehend the true meaning, his doppelganger's fighting power was extremely strong. Moreover, as his level increased, the power of netherworld also became stronger. It wasn't weaker than lightning body at all. It had been 300 years since Chen obtained the Ant Queen. In the past 300 years, Chen, who had nurtured the Ant Queen with all his might, naturally had some results. Chen brought Tyrant underground and came to a huge space. The new Ant Queen was in the space. In the 300 years, it had already grown to the second grade king realm. Around it, there were many dark heavenly ants waiting to hatch. They looked similar to a mother nest. In the distance, there were many dark heavenly ants. They could already form an army. There were first grade and second grade kings. Today, Chen brought Tyrant here to familiarize himself with these dark heavenly ants. After he left, the dark heavenly ants that were left here would need a reliable person to control them. That person was Tyrant. After everything was stable, Tyrant would bring these dark heavenly ants and leave. Looking at these dark heavenly ants, Tyrant knew what kind of situation he would face in the future. He nodded with a solemn expression. Chen patted Tyrant's shoulder and said, "Don't worry. We still have 200 years before we leave." Tyrant said stubbornly, "Am I someone who will worry? Lord Zung is just too excited. He can finally control an army. Next, he can destroy whoever he wants." Chen smiled and didn't expose him. Very soon, another 100 years passed. There was only 100 years left before they left. On this day, Chen, who was in the middle of cultivating, suddenly surged with light. Lightning body activated automatically as though it had met its natural enemy. Chapter 3079. At the edge of this world, 9th grade divine generals would often come here from the divine king's path of heaven. During this time, some natives would appear to welcome the few disciples of their clans. In the past, they could be dismissive of the divine race who came here. They could be arrogant and ridicule them. However, in the past few hundred years, they didn't even have minors. Their attitude toward the divine race had changed drastically. The 9th grade divine generals they had looked down on were now people they could recruit. They wanted to trick the divine generals who came here for the first time to mine for their clans. In the past, they had looked down on 9th grade divine generals. At the very least, they wanted Wang Yiping. Now, they just needed people. It was a kind of helplessness. Don't believe their nonsense. The divine race in this world now follows Lord Chen. Lord Chen won't exploit us. He'll even give us a chance to awaken great powers. A divine king in the distance reminded them. He was a divine king who had awakened his powers. Now that there was no exploitation in this world, all the factions wanted to find more miners to obtain more opportunities. Therefore, the competition between the divine race was fierce. Who would share their resources with the natives? It could be said that in this area, other than Lord Chen's nightmare faction, all the other factions were constantly recruiting. The more, the better. Langdon, how dare you? An angry roar came from afar. One of the natives stared coldly at the divine king who spoke. The second-grade divine king smiled faintly at the natives. What, do you want to fight me? Come, let's see if we, who have awakened our powers, are weaker than you guys. Speaking of which, you're really shameless. You're worried that we'll become stronger, so you destroyed all the awakening altars and prevented us from awakening our powers. If Lord Chen hadn't come here, how much longer would we have been exploited by you? These words naturally resonated. The divine kings who had come here to recruit people, and the oppression they had done to the natives was still vivid in their minds. For a time, wave after wave of powerful auras came from several other directions. The divine kings who came here to recruit had all awakened their powers. When the divine race released their auras, the natives in the distance also released their auras. The god king named Langdon said disdainfully, "What? Are you going to start a war? Even if I lent you tens or hundreds of guts, would you dare? But if you attack us, Lord Chen will definitely annihilate your family." The natives' faces were grim, but as Langdon had said, they did not dare to make a move. "You said that Chen is very strong?" A voice suddenly rang out from the crowd. A few people walked over. The one who spoke was a black-robed man. He was actually a god king. This surprised Langdon, because very few god kings came here. He remembered that when Lord Chen and the others had arrived, they were only god kings. Lord Chen is the hero of our world. A hint of admiration flashed in Langdon's eyes as he said, "If it weren't for Lord Chen, we would still be suppressed by these natives and would never be able to raise our heads. And they definitely wouldn't treat us as humans. Now, everything is different. We've stood up, and we're no longer afraid of the natives." The black-robed man nodded. Langdon continued, "Join our faction. We're very close to Lord Chen's nightmare faction. If you're lucky, you might even be able to see Lord Chen." The black-robed man's gaze swept across the crowd. He saw the fanatical eyes of the natives, and then he looked at the natives, who had ugly expressions and were extremely depressed. A cold smile appeared on his face as he said, "If that's the case, I'll join your faction." The black-robed man looked at the natives who had spoken. "What?" The natives were stunned, as if they could not believe it. "We'll join your faction," the black-robed man said. "Hey, did you make a mistake? We won't be oppressed if we follow Lord Chen," Langdon said. "Lord Chen?" The black-robed man's lips flashed with disdain. "In my eyes, he's not worthy of being a lord." "Impudent!" Langdon shouted angrily, releasing a powerful aura. "Don't provoke me, or you'll die." The black-robed man's eyes flashed coldly, and rays of black light appeared around him, releasing a powerful aura. Langdon's expression changed instantly, because he felt the threat of death from the black-robed man. Wang Yiping, who had just arrived here, was a threat to an awakened Wang Yiping? How was this possible? However, this sort of situation was not without precedent. It was said that Lord Chen had been this powerful in the past. This black-robed man did not take Lord Chen seriously. Could he be in existence on par with Lord Chen? And judging from his expression and tone, did he know Lord Chen? There was a hint of delight in the natives' eyes. If they could really meet a powerhouse comparable to Chen, it would naturally be a good thing for their family. At this moment, a light suddenly appeared. Two people appeared in the light. One was Chen, and the other was Su Mengyao. "Greetings, my lord." The awakened Protoss around them had seen Chen before, so they all bowed. The black-robed man's pupils shrank, and then a look of disdain appeared on his face. "You've become a lord." Beside the black-robed man, the other people's expressions also changed. Chen looked at them and smiled. "We're really fated." The people in front of him were none other than Ji Wei and the others. They were the people who had caused a lot of trouble in the divine realm. "What do you want?" Ben Senlu stared at Chen and said indifferently. The others were extremely shocked. They did not expect Lord Chen to know these people. However, looking at their nervous expressions, even if they knew each other, they were not friendly. "It's been a long time since we last met. I'm very happy to see you, and I want to talk to you about what happened back then." Chen smiled mockingly. "You want to kill me?" Ben Senlu said coldly. What do you think? Zichen looked at him. You dare to kill me? Ben Senlu said again. Zichen laughed mockingly. Are you bluffing? Do you think it will be difficult for me to kill you? Among these people, except for Ji Wei and Wang Yiping, the others were all 9th grade divine generals. For Zichen, killing them was too easy, even if they had special life-saving items given to them by the divine realm. Ji Wei's expression was still disdainful. He said coldly, You're still so boring. Why don't I see Yi Qian? Hearing the name Yi Qian, Xin Lin bit her red lips, and her expression fluctuated greatly. Zichen did not answer Ji Wei's question. Instead, he looked at him and said, Why is the scar on your face gone? I remember you said that it was a scar that represented your hatred. How childish. Ji Wei snorted coldly. Zichen said, I also think you were childish back then. What, you want to fight me? Chapter 3080. While Zichen had been cultivating, his lightning body had sensed the aura of that self-proclaimed natural enemy, so he had come here to take a look. He hadn't expected to run into Ya Wei. Seeing Ya Wei's calm expression, it was clear that he was better at controlling the fleeing black energy than Yu Shiyu. Zichen was silent. You won't attack me, so what are you still standing here for? Ya Wei said to Zichen. As an enemy, Ya Wei naturally understood Zichen, perhaps even better than the others who knew Zichen. Even though he knew that the two of them were going to fight, he was currently only Wang Yiping, but what was Zichen's cultivation level? Thus, under these circumstances, Zichen definitely wouldn't attack. This wasn't because he was afraid of losing face, but because his personality dictated it. After discovering that this person was Ya Wei, Zichen was very surprised, but he truly didn't want to fight him, even if they were all enemies. They were too weak. And Zichen needed them. Originally, he didn't know how to arrange everything after he left, but now, it seemed that he had a plan. He said, This isn't the place to talk. Come with me. Follow you. Why should we? Ben Senlu said. Sina and the others had cold expressions. If they followed Zichen, this enemy, they might be killed on the way. They weren't so careless. Ya Wei said, We've already decided to join his faction. His faction. Ya Wei pointed at the indigenous person. Zichen turned to glance at the indigenous person. The latter's expression was extremely unsightly, but he didn't dare say anything. Zichen smiled and said, Are you sure? Ya Wei said, Of course. He spoke in a matter-of-fact tone, but his expression wavered. Clearly, he had been swayed by Zichen's words. Let's go. You're still very unfamiliar with this world, Zichen said calmly, then turned and walked away. Ya Wei hesitated for a moment, then followed. The indigenous person felt that this was a great pity. Ya Wei was the strongest member of their group. If even he left, Sina and the others had no reason to stay. The group of people followed Zichen towards the Nightmare faction. How's the situation in the God world? Zichen asked as they advanced. It's a mess, Chi Wei said. This was clearly not the answer that Zichen wanted. Wag Wei continued, The situation has changed greatly. If we can't go with the flow, we will be destroyed. Although your forces are far from the battlefield and there are many space-time creatures in between, in this great chaos, you should not be able to hold on. Zichen looked at Rocky. Rocky smiled faintly and said, I only have one city. If it's destroyed, I'll just build another one. Zichen looked at Sina and the others, only to receive a cold glare in return. Without the heavenly gods, it looked like the children of heavenly gods weren't doing too well. Although it looked like they were here to train, it was more likely that they were here to avoid the great upheaval of the god realm. This was something that Zichen had thought about for a long time before he finally understood. Without a single god king among them, they would definitely face a purge. As the saying goes, those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish. Moreover, in a situation where the heavenly gods might not return, how many of their trusted subordinates were still loyal? Without strength or influence, the children of heavenly gods were no longer safe in the god realm. Zichen brought Chi Wei back to the Nightmare faction. Tyrant and the others naturally recognized Chi Wei, and when they saw him, they were very surprised. However, they didn't have any thoughts of enmity. In fact, from a certain point of view, they even felt a trace of closeness. After all, they were once familiar with each other, even if they were enemies. It could even be said that they were a group of lovable enemies. In the past, the development and strength of the Nightmare faction could not be avoided without their contributions. "This is your faction. And here I thought it was much bigger," Qi Wei said mockingly. Zichen smiled and didn't deliberately explain. He directly brought them into the main hall. During this time, they saw Yi Qian. Aside from Xin Lin, whose expression had changed greatly, the others were calm. This was because they had always been targeting Zichen. As for Yi Qian, the goddess, they didn't deliberately target her. Xin Lin was also aware of her current situation, so no matter how arrogant she was usually, she didn't use harsh words to bully Yi Qian today. To be honest, Yi Qian was her elder sister. They came to the main hall, and after they took their seats, Zichen said, "Since you have just arrived here, let me introduce the structure of this world to you." This was originally the training ground of the god race. All the god race who came here could rely on the awakening altar to awaken their rule power and enhance their combat strength. The original inhabitants were responsible for guarding these altars and providing us with resources. But in the end, they betrayed us and destroyed all the awakening altars. Hearing Zichen's words, their expressions changed. Zichen continued, "Without the awakening altar, the god race was so weak that they couldn't even kill a heavenly beast of the same level. At the same time, a third-grade king could barely deal with an original inhabitant of Wang Yiping's level. The comparison of levels made everyone feel more realistic, and their expressions changed even more. This situation continued until we arrived, and only then did it improve. When we were in danger of being surrounded, Yi Qian summoned the awakening altar, and we were able to enter the altar to escape and awaken our powers." Everyone looked at Yi Qian, puzzled. Zichen looked at Sina and the others and said, "I believe you guys can also summon the awakening altar." Yarrow Wei reacted and immediately said, "You mean, God left a backup plan, and the Son of God can summon the hidden awakening altar?" Zichen nodded. Jiao Wei was as smart as ever. Zichen said, "That's right. The Son of God can summon the altar and own it. But the altar can only awaken the God race's rule power, which is comparable to the original inhabitants of the same level. But the original inhabitants have controlled this world for many years, and the scale of their development is unimaginable. During this period, they will think of ways to destroy the altar. Once they destroy it, they will lose everything. For Zichen to be able to restrain the aboriginals under such circumstances, he must have other means besides his own strength." Zichen continued, "If you join the original inhabitants today, what awaits you is death." Jiao Wei said, "If that's the case, why don't you destroy the original inhabitants? The original inhabitants can condense the superm crystal, which is necessary for our growth. So, the god race and the original inhabitants live in symbiosis. In the past, the god race who couldn't awaken their rule power were miners at the lowest level. The original inhabitants also need such labor to extract resources." Jiao Wei said, "Then what do you want?" Chapter 3081. After Zichen finished speaking, Yang Wei frowned. Sina and the others were even more displeased. Who were they? They were the sons of God. How could they become Zichen's subordinates? Moreover, they were his enemies. It was already good enough that they were not jealous of him. They could not become Zichen's subordinates. Looking at their ugly expressions, Zichen smiled faintly and said, "You don't have a choice. Without my protection, you will only die if you go out. Most importantly, the news that the sons of God can summon the awakening altar has already spread. So, if you leave, you will be hunted down by all the factions. There is already a nightmare faction in this world. They will not allow a second nightmare faction to appear." Seeing that their expressions were still ugly, Zichen continued, "Furthermore, you have already lost everything, don't you?" Benson Liu said unhappily, "Who are you saying has nothing left?" Zichen said, "If you have, why are you here?" Benson Liu said angrily, "It's all because of you." He had enough reason to be angry. After all, the reason he had fallen to this point was mainly because of Zichen. Back then, He had suffered too great a loss with Zichen. After his godfather left, he was suppressed by other factions. Similarly, the others were not much different. Perhaps they still had some factions, but they could not guarantee that they would survive or develop well in the great upheaval. Thus, they had come here. Seeing them fall silent, Zichen said, "Right now, this world has not been touched by others. If you contribute the awakening altar, I will protect you and help you grow. When you are independent, I will allow you to establish your own factions." "You are so kind." Yang Wei looked at Zichen. "I am not being kind. I just don't want the god race to continue to be suppressed after we leave. Moreover, if we can gather them together, it will be a good thing for us." Zichen said. "You want to leave this place?" Yang Wei frowned. "This world is not just a single level. There are other levels. After reaching the third grade king level, it will be very difficult to continue to grow. Those indigenous forces only treated rank 4 as their foundation. Once a rank 4 fought, they would expend a lot of energy. However, due to the suppression of rules, their recovery would be very slow. Therefore, under normal circumstances, after reaching rank 3, they will leave this place." Zichen looked at them and explained, "But we're not leaving yet. According to the original plan, we still have 100 years. After 100 years, we will leave, but we will leave someone behind to continue to guard this place. Now that I've met you, we can work together." Xavier, who had been silent all this time, said, "We are enemies. Why should we work together?" Zichen said, "We are enemies in the god realm, but not here. When you understand the situation here, you will understand what kind of situation the Protoss are in." Yang Wei looked at the others. After all, this was related to the awakening altars of the sons of gods. He couldn't make the decision for them. "We need to think about it." Seeing that no one had expressed their opinion, Wag Wei said, "That's fine." Zichen nodded and said, "I'll leave this place for you to think about. If you agree, then we'll have to discuss our next move." Then, Zichen and the others left the hall. Wag Wei, Ben Senlu, Xin Lin, Xavier, and Sina stayed behind. "Why did you bring them here?" After Zichen walked out of the hall, Monk came up and asked. He wasn't worried that Wag Wei and the others could hear him. "With them here, the Protoss will have more chances to awaken," Zichen said. Monk snorted and said, "Killing them is the best choice. Isn't it better to leave this place for us to develop?" This time, before Zichen could speak, Su Mengyaro said, "We have too few awakening altars. There are too many Protoss here. We can't recruit all of them. Rather than that, why don't we work together and give the other Protoss a chance?" Monk was just complaining. He understood the logic. Now, the 2 awakening altars had reached the limit of the number of people they could hold, but there were still countless people waiting. They had already reached the standard set by Su Mengyaro. Zichen said, "There are 4 of them, so there are 4 altars. We'll leave 2 for us and 2 for the other factions." They all nodded. Although Wag Wei and the others hadn't agreed yet, they believed that they would eventually agree. Zichen and the others left. The 5 of them were still silent. After a while, Wag Wei said, "What do you think?" Ben Senlu snorted and said, "That Zichen isn't even the adopted son of a god. What right does he have to enslave us?" "That's right. Back then, he was defeated by me," Sina said. "I was the one who almost killed him in Thunder God Temple." Wag Wei smiled and didn't say anything. "It was all in the past." Xavier said, "Back then, he stole something from me. That was when Zichen was still a skeleton. In a city, Zichen almost killed Xavier and stole his resources." Xin Lin suddenly had the urge to laugh when she saw the unwillingness on their faces. Even though she didn't get any benefits from Zichen, she couldn't do anything about it. Actually, she was different from the others. These people didn't dare to confront Yi Chen, so they deliberately targeted Zichen. But she wasn't. She had always targeted Yi Chen and Zichen. After a few words of complaint, they looked at each other and fell silent again. Seeing everyone fall silent again, Wag Wei said, "Then it's settled. We'll stay in Zichen's faction for now. Once we have the ability to establish our own faction, we'll leave." If Zi Chen dares to order me to do anything, I definitely won't forgive him. Ben Senlu snorted. Me too, Sina said coldly. And so, this matter was decided. After Zi Chen returned to the hall, he looked at everyone with a smile and said, "Have you all made your choice?" They nodded unwillingly. Wag Wei said, "It's still the same. We're only joining temporarily. Don't worry, I'm not you. I'll keep my word." Zi Chen said with a smile. "Don't think about ordering us around. We're only cooperating with you. We're not really your subordinates. You need to be clear about this," Ben Senlu said. Zi Chen said with a smile, "Of course I know. Don't worry, we're only cooperating. We definitely won't order you around. Now, you and Sina will go outside and summon the awakening altar. Meng Yarrow will tell you where to place the altar." They just said they wouldn't order him around and now he was ordering them around. The two glared at each other with dissatisfaction. Zi Chen continued, "Don't get too close to the altar. It's not good." The two's faces darkened. They coldly snorted and walked outside. "Goddess, you should go too. Leave the altar that you and the godchild summon for the nightmare faction." Zi Chen looked at Xin Lin and said with a friendly attitude. Xin Lin nodded. After all, she was living under someone else's roof and there was no problem with Zi Chen's attitude. Chapter 3082. After Ben Senlu and Sina came out, they followed Su Mengyao's instructions and began to summon the awakening altars. These two awakening altars were open to the public. Yi Qian arranged for Xin Lin and Xavier to come out as well. As they released their auras, they sensed the location of the awakening altars. As their thoughts descended, the awakening altars appeared in the air. The appearance of 4 altars shocked the god kings of the nightmare faction. The 4 sons of God were also stunned. Although they had expected this, they were still shocked when they saw the awakening altars. Next, the nightmare faction burst into cheers. With 4 more awakening altars, everyone's chances had increased greatly. On the same day, the 4 sons of God negotiated with Su Mengyaro and Yi Qian and went to their awakening altars. After confirming the exact coordinates of the 4 awakening altars, Yi Qian and Su Mengyaro arranged for the other god kings to enter. Hearing the cheers all around, Ji Wei's expression became complicated. Zi Chen glanced at him and said, "You can go take a look around and get to know this place better. The power you obtained last time was a bit strange. You should be careful." Ji Wei looked at Zi Chen in surprise. Zi Chen said, "Don't misunderstand. I'm not worried about you. The one who obtained your power last time is already dead. He died at my hands, but that power ran away. I don't want that power to run away again after killing you. That way, there will never be enough enemies to kill." Ji Wei snorted and said, "You don't need to worry." He turned around and walked into the distance. As Wang Yiping, he wanted to have a better understanding of this world. When the news spread, all of the God race factions were in an uproar. With 4 more awakening altars, the number of openings had increased greatly. Everyone's chances of getting a chance had also increased. When the Kli faction heard the news, they were also very happy. They were the only native faction that was happy for Zi Chen. The other factions were filled with worry. However, as long as Zi Chen did not leave this world, they would never dare to attack the Protoss, and the suppression would always exist. This made them extremely depressed. All of them wanted Zi Chen to leave quickly so that they could attack with all their might and destroy the celestial race and regain their control. After a few days, Qu Wei returned. During this time, he had gained a deeper understanding of this world. He had seen the celestial races from other forces and the heavenly beasts here. Both sides had also fought before. After returning, he immediately went to awaken his power. "What do you plan to do?" In the hall, Su Mengyaro looks at the worried Zi Chen. Zi Chen slowly shook his head and said, "I haven't thought about it yet. In short, we must not give up on the Shen clan here." After hearing what Yang Wei said, he knew that the situation in the God world had become more dangerous, so he wanted to go back and take a look. However, it was impossible for the Protoss here to give up so easily. That was because once they returned to the divine realm, they would erupt with their most powerful battle prowess. They could completely sweep away the other divine kings of the divine realm. Because they had awakened their power, those divine kings of the divine realm should not have. But now, how to smoothly bring them out of this world was a huge problem. Because he did not know much about the next level. You can ask the Kerry faction. Maybe they know something, Su Mengyaro said. Zichen nodded. It seemed that this was the only way. He went directly to the Kerry faction. At the same time, it was also his first time going to a city in this world, even though it was under the control of the Kerry faction. The city was very lively. There were natives everywhere. There was no trace of the Shun clan at all. Zichen's arrival made the Aborigines along the way very surprised. Soon, the Kerry family members received the news. Then, Clevenley personally appeared. When he saw Zichen, he was very surprised. I didn't expect the city to be so lively. Zichen looked at the lively crowd and said, there are many natives, but not all of them can awaken their power. Those who can't will stay here and work. Clevenley said, Sir, how come you have time to come here today? I want to ask you, do you know anything about the situation of the other world? Zichen did not beat around the bush and asked directly. The other world? Clevenley was stunned. In about 100 years, I will leave here, Zichen said. Although Clevenley knew this day would come, he was still surprised when he heard it. We know almost nothing about the other world, but I believe it's the same as here. Usually, if we want to send a message to the higher-ups, we can only send a rank 3. And the person who sends the message can never come back. Clevenley brought Zichen to his family's restaurant. The business here was quite good. In the past few hundred years, the Kerry family had developed very well. During this period, they had also gained the support of many small factions, so the city was very lively. There had even been a private rumor that the Kerry faction could become a royal faction in the future. Since the two sides can't communicate, why do you still send a message to the higher-ups? Zichen asked, puzzled. This involves personal grievances. For example, if you are suppressed by a faction, you will send a message. Perhaps that faction is weaker, so they will be suppressed. Of course, we don't know the specifics. Clevenley said, I believe the faction on the other level already knows about your situation, so when you reach the next level, you must be careful. They may deliberately look for you and then kill you. After all, in the other world, rank 4 is just the beginning. There will be stronger people. Zichen did not get the information he wanted, so Clevenley treated him to a meal. Naturally, it was the best meal in the city. Before you leave, have you thought about what to do? Clevenley asked at last. I haven't thought about it yet, but this matter will definitely be resolved. With Zichen's words, Clevenley was relieved. This time, whether the Kerry family could take advantage of the situation and rise up would depend on what Zichen did when he left. Zichen returned to the Nightmare faction. Su Mengyaro told him that the spirit-devouring King Grass had returned. Zichen nodded. In the past few hundred years, he had not been cultivating all the time. Every time the spirit-devouring King Grass returned, he would go out with it for a while. During this time, he mainly searched for the godly king's soul essences. During this time, Zichen discovered a few large mineral veins. 2 of them were occupied by the Nightmare faction, and 1 was transferred to another faction by Zichen. However, the Nightmare faction also had a share of the resources mined. In the blink of an eye, another 5 years passed. Chapter 3083. After Yang Wei broke through, Zichen had not returned yet. Therefore, he followed the hunting team and went out to hunt heavenly beasts to familiarize himself with this world. Before he left, Su Mengyaro gave him some superb crystal for him to refine and grow. He successfully used this awakening to reach rank 2 king. As the team went out, he listened to everyone's discussions and gained a deeper understanding of this world. Looking at the smiles on their faces, Yang Wei felt how difficult it was to achieve all this. Moreover, this situation could not last long. The natives were like tigers and wolves, eyeing them covetously from the side. They could destroy everything the God clan had now. This was also the main reason why Zichen had not left yet. Although he disdained Zichen's way of doing things, he still admired him a little. At the same time, Yang Wei felt lucky. If they had not met Zichen, even if they summoned the awakening altar, they might not have been able to protect them. The situation here was more dangerous than he had imagined. Bang! Energy vibrated, smoke and dust flew everywhere, and countless gravel whistled like hidden weapons. Zichen's figure appeared. Above his head, the spirit-devouring king grass was floating. Looking at the mineral vein below, Zichen shot out a beam of energy. After marking it, he went to the second mineral vein. All these years, the spirit-devouring king grass would automatically devour the god king's soul essences in the mineral vein after discovering them. Its realm had already reached rank 3, and it had grown 3 leaves. However, if there were more than 3 god king's soul essences in the mineral vein, it would not be able to devour them and would need Zichen to do it. Therefore, every mineral vein it discovered was not small. All these years, Zichen had obtained many god king's soul essences. After collecting all the god king's soul essences that the spirit-devouring king grass could not devour, Zichen was ready to go to the underworld organization. Speaking of which, it had been many years since he had seen Lord Underworld. Unlike before, the current underworld organization had come out from the dark. All of this was naturally related to the rise of the Nightmare Organization. The natives could tolerate the existence of the Nightmare Organization, so they would not attack the underworld organization. They were worried that Zichen would come knocking on their door. After arriving at the underworld faction's encampment, everyone immediately recognized Zichen, and the scene from the first time would not repeat itself. Under the guidance of a second-rank king, Zichen met the leader of the Netherworld race in the encampment. The man looked at Zichen and said with emotion, "Sure enough, every time I see you, you always bring surprises. Looking at your achievements, even this old man feels ashamed of his inferiority." The Netherworld chief was referring to Zichen's cultivation level. Although the current Zichen did not deliberately release his aura, the Nether chief was in existence at a very high realm. Naturally, he could sense Zichen's true realm. Zichen had only been in this world for a few hundred years, but he had already reached the 4th grade king realm. "I'm here to ask if you're planning to leave this world," said Zichen. The leader of the Netherworld race asked, "Are you ready to leave?" "Prepare to leave in a few decades," Zichen said. "If you leave, this world will no longer be stable, and we might have to go from light to darkness again," said the leader of the Netherworld race. Zichen smiled faintly, knowing that the other party was teasing him. "Hence," he said, "are you not going to leave?" The leader of the Netherworld race sighed and said, "I don't have such plans for now. As you can see, I haven't found a successor yet. Once I leave, there will definitely be chaos in the Netherworld." After thinking for a while, Zichen said, "If you don't leave for now, I hope you can lend a hand when the Nightmare faction faces problems." "Zichen, you're being too modest. Who doesn't know that your Nightmare faction is the strongest and can suppress all the natives?" said the leader of the Netherworld race with a smile. Although he was joking, the leader of the Netherworld race still promised that if he needed his help, he would definitely lend a hand. Zichen asked some questions about the other layer of the Divine King realm, but the leader of the Netherworld race expressed that he was not clear about it. At this moment, in Zichen's world, the divine clone was sitting cross-legged and cultivating. However, he was not as calm as before. His emotions seemed to be restless. When he opened his eyes and was about to end his cultivation, he saw a pair of eyes staring at him. This gave him a fright, and his body subconsciously moved backward. It was the powerful heavenly beast called Heavenbreaker. He had always been in a deep slumber. Unexpectedly, he had woken up this time. Moreover, he was staring at him from so close, but he did not notice him at all. "You are the Netherworld?" Heavenbreaker suddenly asked. "What Netherworld?" asked the divine clone. "You have the power of the Netherworld. If it's not the Netherworld, then what is it?" Heavenbreaker said, "However, why are you so weak?" The divine clone said, "I don't know what you are talking about. I obtained this power by accident." Heavenbreaker walked in front of the divine clone and said, "Oh, tell me. How did you obtain the power of the Netherworld?" Although the divine clone shared the same soul as Zichen, their consciousnesses were separate. Normally, they would not use each other. Thus, the divine clone did not know how he obtained the power of the Netherworld. He could only tell the details of what he saw. Although Heavenbreaker's origins were unknown, he should not have any evil intentions toward the divine clone. Thus, the divine clone did not hide anything. After explaining everything, the divine clone said, "That's how it is." At that time, the divine clone was unable to refine the power of the netherworld, and we needed battle power. Although I felt that this power was strange, I still used it. Thus, it became like this. Heavenbreaker's lips curled up in disdain. He said, "It's not just strange. It's very strange." "What do you mean?" asked the divine clone. Heavenbreaker said, "You won't understand even if I tell you. Now, do you feel that something is not quite right?" The divine clone nodded and said, "Yes, I feel that the power is somewhat irritable, and my emotions are not very stable. How should I say it? I feel like I want to kill someone." "Then hurry up and leave. Why are you still standing here like an idiot? Are you waiting to die?" said Heavenbreaker. The divine clone felt that this was not a small matter. Thus, he immediately transmitted his voice to the divine clone. At this moment, Zichen had also finished discussing some matters with the Netherworld chief. He said, "Since it's like that, I'll take my leave." The Netherworld chief nodded. Then, he said with a hint of pity, "Your divine clone is very extraordinary. It's a pity that you're going to leave. Otherwise, I would be very relieved to hand over everything here to him." Zichen smiled and said, "If my divine clone knew about this, he would definitely be very happy. However, he's been in seclusion recently, so I'm afraid he won't be able to thank you in person." Zichen left the Netherworld Organization's base. Then, he chose to teleport away and headed toward the Nightmare Organization. After leaving this area, his figure flashed and entered his world. The divine clone said, "Master Heavenbreaker told me that there's a problem with the power of the Netherworld." Zichen looked toward the awakened Heavenbreaker. "Before you have the power, you should avoid this place. Otherwise, you'll be devoured by the Netherworld," Heavenbreaker said in an indifferent voice. "Master, do you know what's going on?" Zichen asked in confusion. Heavenbreaker said, "The Netherworld has always been very powerful. However, something has happened to it. He was able to obtain the power of the Netherworld. Perhaps the Netherworld wants to use him to be reborn." Chapter 3084. Back at the encampment, Zichen told Tyrant to be careful of the Netherworld leaders after they left this place. If both sides could avoid contact, it was best not to. Zichen was puzzled as to why this lord was unwilling to leave. Initially, he guessed that this lord wanted to bring along a group of powerful Netherworld leaders like the Ant Queen. Now that he heard Heavenbreaker's words, this might not be the case. "Ya Wei has already broken through," Tyrant said. Zichen wasn't surprised. Ya Wei's talent wasn't low and he had once walked the path of the Earth Realm. It was normal for him to be able to break through in such a short time. Tyrant said, "You promised them that when they have the ability, they will be able to set up their own factions. When that time comes, it will be very disadvantageous for us." Ya Wei had a total of 4 awakening altars while Zichen only had 2. Once both sides started to compete, it would naturally be disadvantageous for them. Zichen was clear about this. However, there was still a long time. During this period of time, the Nightmare faction should be able to nurture many awakened god kings. "It's okay. There are many gods here. Don't worry," Zichen said. "Will Ya Wei collude with the natives after you leave to go against us?" Tyrant asked again. After all, it hadn't been long since Zichen left. Under such circumstances, Tyrant had to consider all possibilities. "I don't think so. We are all passers-by here. The real enemy is outside. I believe that in this place, we will not go against each other." On this day, Tyrant asked many questions. They were all about things that might happen in the future. Of course, they might never happen. For example, what would happen if more children of gods came? Zichen's answer was to give them protection first. Just like Ya Wei and the others, he could let them leave on their own when they had the ability. Because this world was too big and there were too many gods, even if dozens of children of gods came, it would still be able to accommodate them. Zichen already had the dark heavenly ant army. Compared to the gods, they were more convenient and could grow faster. Now that everyone had left, Chen wouldn't feel regretful. All the arrangements that followed were actually for the sake of the gods here. In the last period of time, Chen brought the soul-devouring king grass to sweep through this area and obtained more god-king soul essences. Another few decades later, it was time to leave. Roy, Martin, Li Ari, Lunky, Zhong Haotian, Tyrant, and Longhu continued to stay here while Chen left with the others. Other than these people on the surface, the new Ant Queen had also secretly nurtured an army of darkness heavenly ants. This was the true backup that Chen had left behind in this world. There's a show to watch. Let's go watch the show first. The monk chuckled out as his eyes were filled with reluctance. Chen and the others headed towards the world where the natives lived. They followed the crowd with great momentum. This time, he wasn't going to the second level. Like Tyrant and the others, he wanted to see the city of the Aborigines and see what Chen was going to do next. At the same time, there were many divines following behind. They all knew what their leader Chen was going to do, and they were all very excited. Every move of the Nightmare faction had been sensed by the natives over the years, so when Chen moved today, there were countless spirit eagles moving above his head. Ji Wei looked up at the spirit eagle above his head and said, "Don't you find it annoying? Why don't you take them down?" "I can't take them down, so I can save some energy," said Chen. "Are you confident?" Ji Wei asked again. It had been 100 years since he came to this world. Naturally, he knew enough about this world and its history, as well as Chen's strength and backup plan. Although those darkness heavenly ants were indeed terrifying, what he was going to face this time was the natives who had developed for countless years. Moreover, it wasn't just a family, but all the natives. Under such circumstances, other than Kerry's faction supporting him, it was impossible for the other factions to support him. They might even gang up on him. Therefore, Ji Wei felt the pressure. Everything was as Chen said. In this world, they weren't enemies. Instead, they had a common enemy. To put it bluntly, they were all homeless and pitiful people who were in the same boat. "We have to go even if we're not confident. After all, this concerns the fate of all the divines," said Chen in a deep voice. The aura of a rank 4 martial artist came from afar. The Nether Chief also appeared, but he didn't come forward. He just followed from afar. When Chen looked over, he nodded at Chen. Behind Chen's group, more divines appeared. They already knew what Chen was going to do. At the same time that they were excited, they were also touched by what they saw. A city appeared in front of them. There were many natives standing outside the city. They were also very excited. The leader was Cliven, and in front of him stood an old man. The old man was a rank 4 martial artist. Seeing the arrival of Chen's group, Kerry said, "Chief Chen, we're ready." Chen looked at the natives behind Kerry, shook his head slowly, and said, "There's no need for that. Just one person is enough to lead the way." "I'll go," Clevenly said. "Then I'll have to trouble you, Patriarch." Chen bowed. Kerry walked over. He found it hard to calm down. It hadn't been easy for the Kerry family to develop to this point, but it would be very difficult to take another step forward. However, there was an opportunity right now. Whether or not they could become a dragon would depend on today. Of course, they might be destroyed. CLY Brunei was both excited and nervous. "Where do we go first?" asked Kerry. "The closest one," said Chen. "That's the Meek family. Let's go." Under Kerry's lead, Chen walked towards the Meek family. The spiritual eagle in the sky immediately spread the news. All the native forces in the world were watching Chen. The Meek family was not a small family. When Chen had first arrived in this world, he had come into contact with the Meek family. He remembered that person was called Mycelian. At that time, Mycelian had been very arrogant. He viewed all the Protoss men as slaves and the women as tools for reproduction. In the blink of an eye, a few hundred years had passed. After the previous crisis, the Meek family had once again encountered trouble. Patriarch Meek looked at the spiritual eagle's message, and his expression became very ugly. Through the spiritual eagle's vision, he saw that Chen was getting closer and closer to the Meek family. The one leading the way was Chris Brunei. "Damn you, Kerry. As long as we avoid this disaster, your Kerry family will definitely be destroyed. As Patriarch Meek cursed, Zichen once again arrived outside the Meek family's city. He leapt into the air and shouted at the city ahead, "Rank 4, come out." Chapter 3085. Zichen's voice reverberated in the air, reaching the city under the control of the Meek clan. When the residents heard this voice, their expressions changed. Daring to challenge a rank 4, this person was obviously very powerful. Seeing the person in the air, the Meek clan guards on the city walls were clearly terrified. The scene from last time was still vivid in their minds. Countless dark heavenly ants had broken through the Great Barrier and appeared in the city. It was too terrifying. The voice spread into the city, causing chaos. The Meek clan master had no choice but to appear. Zichen, what is the meaning of this? He arrived on the city walls and shouted at Zichen in the air. Monk and the others stood in the distance, not approaching. Tell your rank 4 to come out. Otherwise, the Meek clan will be destroyed today, Zichen said coldly. You've gone too far. The Meek clan master said angrily. My patience is limited. Zichen's attitude was irresistible. His eyes flashed coldly. What business do you have with this old man? An old voice came from the Meek clan residence. An old man appeared out of thin air. This clan no longer needs you. Either you leave this place and enter the next level, or you fight me to the death, Zichen said in a low voice. This was his goal. He didn't need to kill all of the rank 4 kings. He only needed to ensure that there were no more rank 4 enemies in this world. The rank 4 king from the Meek clan said in a low voice, You want to destroy us? If I only wanted to destroy you, would I need to drive you away? Zichen looked at him mockingly. Wouldn't it be better if I destroyed you as well? The rank 4 king from the Meek clan was clearly enraged, but he had seen Zichen's battles before. He knew that if he got angry, his clan would be destroyed. Fine. He nodded and left. Seeing this rank 4 king leave, Zichen turned and left. He didn't attack the Meek clan. While the natives of the Meek clan sighed in relief, their hearts were also filled with sorrow. From today onwards, the Meek clan no longer had a rank 4. But that wasn't absolute. What if he couldn't win? Patriarch Meek still held on to one last hope. After the rank 4s from the Meek clan left, the other forces understood Zichen's intentions. Hence, there was an uproar. Clearly, he wanted to chase all the rank 4s to another level. That way, without rank 4 combat strength, they would not be a threat to the Protoss. The most important thing was that the Kerry faction would rise, and they would stand on the side of the divine race. Zichen was led by the patriarch of the Kelly family to the second family. This family was the Duke faction. Arriving outside the Duke faction, Zichen shouted the same cold words. Zichen, you're mistaken. Our Duke faction doesn't have a rank 4. The Duke faction's patriarch smiled bitterly. Zichen turned around to look at the head of the Klee family. The latter shook his head and said, I've never heard of it, but no one knows if it's true or not. Zichen looked at the family head of the Duke faction and said indifferently, If you let the rank 4 appear and leave now, I will treat it as if nothing happened. On the other hand, I think you've given up on rank 4. I really didn't. The Duke faction's patriarch smiled bitterly again. Zichen said coldly, All right then, I'll treat it as you giving up on rank 4. After saying that, he flew towards the city. Naturally, no one dared to use the light shield to stop him. The moment Zichen rushed into the city, in a courtyard, there was a roar. A powerful rank 4 aura exploded. A rank 4 was caught by a leaf and flew towards the sky. Zichen, who was rushing forward, had a sheathed long saber in his hand. His eyes were cold. Zichen, stop. We were wrong. Stop now. The Duke family's patriarch shouted loudly. Buzz. The long saber was unsheathed. An arc of the saber flashed past, sweeping past the rank 4's neck. The rank 4's head flew up, and his life force disappeared. The leaves of the spirit-devouring king grass pierced into the rank 4's body, devouring the dead rank 4's energy. Zichen, what are you doing? I already said that I was wrong. Just let him leave. Why did you have to kill him? The Duke family's patriarch said angrily. Zichen looked back at him and said, I gave you a chance. Unfortunately, you didn't cherish it. The Duke family's patriarch said angrily, now that you've killed him, shouldn't you leave? A smile appeared on Zichen's face. He said, see, you didn't cherish your chance again. His smile was very gentle, but it gave the Duke family's patriarch a cruel feeling. It was as if he saw a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood on his face. In the next moment, he understood the meaning of Zichen's smile. His expression froze instantly. His face showed a painful expression. He knelt down in the air and shouted, spare me. Zichen stopped smiling and said, it's too late. Just treat it as if you're hitting the bird that stood out. Behind Zichen, an endless stream of dark heavenly ants fell. Then, miserable screams could be heard. This was a battle of annihilation. At the same time, in another direction, the spirit-devouring monarch grass pulled out another rank 4. This time, Zichen didn't make a move. The opponent was killed by the spirit-devouring monarch grass, which had already advanced to rank 4. In these years, Zichen could break through. Naturally, the spirit-devouring monarch grass could also break through in the process of continuously devouring the godly king's soul essences. Clevenley was shocked. Although the Duke family was somewhat famous, they weren't very powerful. All this time, it was suspected that they had rank 4 experts. However, he didn't expect that there would be 2 of them, one more than the powerful Meek family. Prepare to send people to take over this city. I'll leave the women and children behind, said Zichen. Yes. Clevenley nodded. This action showed Zichen's determination. This was only the second family. There would be many more in the future. If they were merciful this time, then there would definitely be other families who would take advantage of this loophole. As expected, the patriarchs of the other families who saw this scene through their spiritual eagles all changed their expressions. They all gave out orders one after another. Ask the rank 4 experts to head to Sky Domain City immediately. They didn't know how the spirit-devouring monarch grass found the rank 4 experts. However, they didn't dare to take the risk because the result of losing the bet would be the destruction of their families. When the dark heavenly ants really showed their power, no other forces could resist unless all the other forces joined forces. However, this was obviously impossible and it was too late. All the rank 4 experts were forcefully transferred out of their families and headed to Sky Domain City. This was the only way to enter the next level. At the same time, the battle to stop Zichen would also erupt here. This was because, other than Clevenley's forces, all the rank 4 experts of the other forces would come here. Zichen left the Duke family. This family would be completely destroyed. Chapter 3086. The Spirit Eagle transmitted the scene of what had happened to the Duke family. This was the first time Zichen had destroyed a family since he came to this world. Even in the battle to gain a foothold, he did not destroy the Parry family. Obviously, this time, he had made his stand clear. It also proved Zichen's determination. Therefore, no other family thought of taking advantage of Zichen. It could be said that the Duke family had set an example for them. Next, they sent out all the 4th-rank warriors in the family. Although this would reveal the family's foundation, it was better than hiding and implicating the family itself. Although Zichen guessed that this would definitely deter those families, he still did not give up searching. One family after another, one city after another. In Parry's forces, the only King Grade 4 walked out after explaining some family matters. How powerful was the Parry family in the past? Unfortunately, they had suffered heavy losses in that battle. The Protoss could gain a foothold in this area because they had stepped on the Parry family. Therefore, as long as there was a chance, he would definitely kill Zichen. Elder Ancestor, aren't you going to bring your armor? The head of the Parry family asked. No need. All the 4th-rank warriors will come to Skyfield City. If there is a battle, it won't matter if I wear armor or not. He left the armor as the new foundation of the Parry family. Not long after, Zichen arrived outside the Parry family. After getting an accurate answer and letting the spirit-devouring King Grass search, he went to the next city. Just like that, he walked through one city after another. The Protoss following behind him looked at the natives who did not dare to say a word and were extremely excited. They did not expect that these natives would have such a day. The netherworld leader following behind looked at Zi Chen in front of him with shock in his eyes. Such a person was indeed very strong. And such a feat was not something he could do. He did not have the courage nor the strength. He knew that the most difficult battle would break out in Skyfield City. Because that was the only way out of this world, those fourth-rank kings would gather there to decide whether to start the battle. After walking through one city after another, Zi Chen finally arrived at Sky Domain City. This was the core city. At the very center of the city, there was a huge pillar of light. The pillar of light shot straight into the sky. It was the light of teleportation. It was like a pillar that supported the heavens above. The area outside Sky Domain City was empty, but there were many people standing on the city walls. These people stared coldly at Zi Chen, who was approaching Sky Domain City. They were all at the fourth rank. In this world, all the rank 4 natives had gathered here. They were forced here by Zi Chen. Zi Chen's original intention was to let them leave, but they gathered here and did not leave. Clearly, they had other thoughts in their hearts. You can stop here. Zi Chen glanced at Clevenly beside him. I'll go in with you, sir. Clevenly said. No need. Just wait here. If a battle breaks out, I won't be able to take care of you. With that, Zi Chen flew forward. There was no protective array above Sky Domain City, so he flew directly into the city. Above the city walls, he looked down at the rank 4 natives and said coldly, Didn't I tell you to leave this world? Why aren't you moving? You're too arrogant. A cold voice sounded. An old man flew into the sky. Beside him was a fourth-rank king soul beast. Seeing this old man, there was a commotion in the crowd. From time to time, there would be exclamations. It was the Hob faction. This member of the Soul Race's royal family had finally made an appearance. You've gone too far. Another figure flew into the sky and looked at Zi Chen coldly. This person was the royal faction of the Soldier Clan, the Moni Clan. The Soul Clan, the Soldier Clan, and the Craftsman Clan were the 3 clans in this area. All the natives could be grouped into these 3 clans. In these 3 clans, there was a royal faction. Now, 2 of the 3 royal factions had appeared. Only the Kang clan of the Craftsman clan was left. Whoosh! Another brilliance flashed, accompanied by exclamations. Zi Chen knew that the 3 royal factions had all arrived. Looking at the people of the 3 royal factions, Zi Chen said indifferently, Is everyone here? That's great. You have 10 minutes to decide whether to fight or leave. Facing a group of rank 4 kings alone with such a calm attitude, the other rank 4 kings were enraged. The rank 4 king from the Hob family said, Don't go too far. Zi Chen calmly replied, Remember, don't be the first to stick your neck out. Then, he looked down at the rank 4 kings and said, And you guys, you'd better retreat when the battle starts because I'll only kill those in front of me. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the rank 4 kings changed. Some of them subconsciously retreated. However, there were still some people who were not afraid at all. They said coldly, If you really have the ability, then come at me. Zi Chen glanced at the rank 4 kings who deliberately stepped forward and said with a faint smile, Time's up. After that, he rushed down. Buzz. The void vibrated. The aura of a rank 4 king broke out. The strongest power was displayed from Zi Chen. Zi Chen moved as fast as teleportation into the crowd. He unsheathed his saber. The saber flashed, flashing with the light of yin and yang, and cut in all directions. Puff, puff, puff. Blood splashed, and the sound of flesh being broken was heard. Around Zi Chen, there was no rank 4 king who could stand. The other rank 4 kings' expressions changed greatly. They retreated one after another. They looked at Zi Chen with anger in their eyes. Because the time was not up at all. Why did he take action in advance? Zi Chen sheathed his saber and looked at the frightened rank 4 kings around. He said coldly, Time's up. Since you have made your choice, don't blame me. After that, he disappeared. He reappeared in the crowd again. When he appeared, an arc of a blade appeared. The saber arc swept around. All the rank 4 kings who were touched by the saber arc died. Their bodies were swallowed by the spirit-devouring king grass that appeared later. Looking at Zi Chen's almost slaughtering way of killing, the other rank 4 kings were terrified. They exclaimed and flew away. They did not expect that Zi Chen would be so unruly. "You're courting death." The 3 rank 4 kings from the royal family shouted angrily and flew toward Zi Chen. Zi Chen looked indifferent. His figure flashed again, and he appeared in front of the 3. Buzz. The void trembled again. The saber light cut through the sky. The 3 rank 4 kings who swooped down died in an instant. The god clan who watched the battle behind were extremely shocked. Zi Chen's combat capability was too strong.